welcome to our March 22nd meeting. I'd like to call this meeting of the San Jose Charter Commission to order. And I'd like to ask for the roll to be called.
Okay, I'm going to call the roll. So first we have Barbara Marshman.
Here.
Christina Johnson.
Here.
Dan Bizzuto. Dan Bizzuto. Okay, Elizabeth Monley.
Here.
Ellie Matsumura.
Here.
Enrico Callender.
Good afternoon.
Frank Meitsky.
Here.
Garrick Percival.
Here.
George Sanchez.
Here.
Hui Tran.
Here.
Jeremy Barus.
Here.
Jose Posadas.
Here.
Okay. Lon Diep.
Present.
Linda Lazat.
Here.
Luis Barrocio.
Here.
Magnolia Siegel.
Here.
Maria Fuentes. She is absent. Sammy Robledo.
Here.
Sherry Segura.
Present.
T. Tran.
Present.
Veronica Amador.
Here.
Yong Zhao.
Here.
And Frederick Ferrer.
Here.
Awesome. We have a quorum.
Hi, this is Tony. We need to play a video for the interpretation. If you can give me just a second to get that started.
Go ahead.
We have interpretation tonight, so I have a video to help people understand how to do it. Picked the wrong, I have it open 3 times on my screen, so just give me a second. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to use my word version, which I understand how to do. So we have interpretation in Spanish and Vietnamese. At the bottom, you collect interpretation and click the language you would like to hear. So if you want to hear Vietnamese, you switch to the Vietnamese audio channel. And if you want Spanish, you switch to the Spanish channel. And that is all I had.
Okay, thank you, Tony. In terms of the orders of the day, I'm going to ask that consent item B, the letter to the City Council regarding the budget, be heard concurrently with the work plan, and that we include that in the budget proposal discussions with the work plan. And also, I'm going to ask indulgence tonight. I'm going to move the new business first and then go back to the old business for 2 reasons. One is to be respectful of our guest. Professor Nelson is here from the East Coast. And so we don't want to keep her up till the wee hours of the morning. So we're really grateful that she's joining us tonight. So we're going to start there with our new business. But my second reason is I think it also will inform our actions that we may take on the work plan after her presentation. And it also will allow the public who is joining us tonight to be able to comment both on Professor Johnson's discussion that we have, as well as the work plan itself. So with those, I'm going to move to the consent calendar. And the consent calendar is items to the commission meetings and the item regarding the budget and the request for the budget, the authorization of the chair to request the council additional dollars, and the clerk's report back on terms of budget. If we take action on this, there is a place later for us to take any further action when we look at the work plan, but this is the consent item just coming back to us saying that we had requested it and it's coming back to us for our review. So can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Motion to approve.
Point of, I'm sorry, Chair, just point of clarification. So we are, for section B, you, out of your discretion, we are moving that to the work plan during new business.
Yes.
Got it.
Further actions. We just wanted to make sure that you all received both the letter draft and the budget proposal from the clerk, and we'll take action of it when we take up the work plan. But I wanted it to go in the public record. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Can we take the roll?
Sure, I'll take the roll. First is Barbara Marshman.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if we need to pull the minutes, I'm sorry, procedurally, what's the appropriate way to do that? And I am aware of your good points about being mindful of our guest speaker's time.
Is there, if there's a correction to the minutes, Commissioner Metzler, is that what you're asking?
Yes, there is.
Okay,
I think so anyway.
okay, go ahead.
It is regarding the vote for the budget. I hadn't actually understood that our motion was to bring it back this week to the commission. It sounds like we've got a good plan to discuss it. So I don't know that we would necessarily take action differently, but the minutes don't reflect my understanding of the motion. I had understood that we had moved to actually go ahead and send it directly to the council.
Yes, hi, this is Tony, Tabor City Clerk. After you guys ended the meeting, when Megan and I were talking about it, I realized that we didn't have you authorize the chair to transmit the letter, which is what we typically need to do. So we were bringing it back so he could get that authorization. Typically, you guys say what you want to do, then the chair and I would work together on a letter, and then he would sign it and we'd send it off. But we didn't do that little piece to make it sort of legal. So we needed to bring it back. And I apologize for not catching that the last meeting.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And so is this sort of the typical practice if we pass a motion, but then it turns out that the motion can't be carried out, that we then change the minutes?
I don't think I understand the question.
So I think what I'm hearing is that it was actually a different motion that we approved at the last meeting, but then you realized that we approved a certain motion. You realized that procedurally wouldn't work, and so we needed to do something different than what was approved in the motion. And so then the minutes reflect how you're saying we need to proceed rather than what was the content of the motion. And so I'm asking, is that how we typically do it, is that we change the minutes to reflect essentially sort of what you would have recommended to us that the motion be?
I'm opening the minutes to see how they're worded. Because the minutes did approve to send it, but we didn't authorize the chair, so I couldn't really send it. But let me see this real quick. I opened the wrong minutes, I think. I'm looking at the minutes of February 8th. So you guys can actually go ahead and vote on the orders of the day, and then we can continue this conversation under consent calendar. So procedurally, you can pull things off of consent, and you don't need to do that under orders of the day. So go ahead and vote on orders of the day. Let me take it since it's a lot of names to call, by the time she's done calling, I'll have the correct minutes open. And we'll talk about it when we get to consent.
Okay, so I'll start over with Barbara Marshman.
Here. Sorry. Yes. Yeah, sorry.
Christina Johnson.
Can you come back to me, please?
Yes. Dan Bizzuto. Absent. Elizabeth Monley.
Yes.
Ellie Matsumura.
I'm so sorry. We're voting to approve the minutes.
Oh, the orders of the day, I believe.
So the orders of the day were to pull item B off of the consent calendar and move
Got it. Okay.
to be heard concurrently with the work plan, and then to hear new business before old business.
Okay. Thank you so much for explaining that. Yes.
Yeah, Enrico Calendar.
Aye.
Frank Meitsky.
Yes.
Garrick Percival.
Yes.
George Sanchez.
Yes.
Kui Tran.
Yes.
Jeremy Barus.
Aye.
Jose Posadas.
Yes.
Lon Diep.
Aye.
Sorry, was that I?
Aye.
Thank you. Linda Lazat.
Yes.
Luis Barosio.
Aye.
Magnolia Siegel. Magnolia Siegel.
I'm
Oh.
yes. My vote
Yes.
is yes.
Thank you. Maria Fuentes. She's absent. Sammy Robledo.
Yes. Yes.
Sherry Segura.
Yes.
T. Tran.
Yes.
Veronica Amador.
Yes.
Young Zhao.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That motion carries.
Okay, in the consent calendar, Tony, do you have clarification?
Yes, the minutes do need to be corrected. I want to pull them up and make sure. The problem is I've got like 12 screens open. I need to close some programs.
I didn't get back to Christina Johnson's vote. Could I get your vote, Christina?
Yes.
Thank you.
So the minutes do reflect that it says with the request for budget proposal to be added to the next meeting's agenda. That should say with the request for the budget proposal to be sent to council. It was after the fact that we realized it needed to go onto the next agenda because we didn't authorize anybody to actually write the request. If you have now, just, you know, you don't have to do that every time you make a motion to send something to the council. When you guys have your final plan all formulated, you'll approve that plan and it will get automatically transferred to the council. You don't have to authorize the city clerk to send it. You would just, that's the final approval. That's your final report. But this kind of thing, when we have a letter that's really taking a conversation, there's no specific wording that you guys looked at. You're taking a conversation and sending it to the council. Somebody needs to be authorized to write that without coming back for you to approve the actual language. So you either authorize the chair to do that, or you tell the clerk to come back with final wording for you guys to approve the final wording. And we didn't clarify either one of that. So we needed to bring it back to this meeting. But we will fix the minutes. And you can either make a motion to approve the minutes with that correction, or direct me to come back with a correction to the minutes that we would bring to the next meeting for your final approval.
So maker of the motion was?
We didn't have a maker, we didn't have a consent calendar motion yet.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar with the correction to be made to the minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Lazat. In a second?
Second.
Second.
So that's a consent calendar. So let's take a vote. The clerk will take the roll.
Okay, we'll start with Barbara Marshman.
Aye.
Christina Johnson.
Yes.
Dan Bizzuto, absent. Elizabeth Monley.
Aye.
Ellie Matsumura.
Aye.
Enrico Calendar,
Aye.
Frank Meitzke,
Yes.
Garrick Percival,
Yes.
George Sanchez,
Yes.
Hui Tran, would you mind repeating yourself, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Jeremy Barus,
Aye.
Jose Posadas,
Yes.
Lun Diep,
Aye.
Linda Lazat,
Yes.
Luis Barrocio,
Aye.
Magnolia Siegel,
Yes.
Maria Fuentes is absent, Sammy Robledo,
Yes.
Sherry Segura,
Yes.
sorry, was that yes?
Yes.
Thank you. T. Tran,
Yes.
Veronica Amador,
Yes.
and Young Zhao.
Yes, but the only thing is the minutes spell my first name wrong.
That
I'm
correct?
sorry about that.
We are so sorry.
It's okay. It's just I just noticed the first name spelled wrong.
It was probably an autocorrect. We'll fix that. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you for that. And expediency, let's move forward. Tonight, our new business is that we have a study session on the difference between the council manager and the mayor council governance forms. This evening, we are honored to have Professor Kimberly Nelson from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill School of Government, who will make a presentation. We've asked Professor Nelson to spend about 20 minutes in her presentation. Then we will open up for rounds of questions from the commissioners, and then we will be able to move to our public hearing piece around this item before we move to the work plan for the second part of the public hearing. So I'm going to turn it over to Lawrence to facilitate the conversation and we welcome, excuse me, excuse me, we welcome Professor Nelson and thank her for joining us this evening. Lawrence?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you again to Professor Nelson for joining us. I've been very impressed by Professor Nelson's involvement in this conversation in communities across the country. It's not often you meet someone whose life work is to discuss these very issues that you are contemplating as a commission, and we have someone on the meeting tonight who is that very kind of unicorn. So I hope that you all can really benefit from what she presents, but also ask her the questions that you have about the real particulars of mayor council versus council manager. Professor Nelson is going to share with us what the research shows from a nonpartisan and an unbiased perspective to best she can. Before we get started, I also want to point out two other resources that were shared with you all. One is a chart of comparison between the two governance forms that Fred is holding up right there. And that was requested by you all. This, I think, is a living document. It's something that we put together for you and run by Professor Nelson. She's graciously given her input on this. And so I hope this becomes something that informs the conversation moving forward and helps to be a cheat sheet of sort as far as the language we use and some of the differences between forms. And if there's other things that we can add to this over time, we'll do so. The second piece is a memo from Professor Terry Christensen, which Chair has printed out. We had a professor emeritus at San Jose State University, Professor Christensen. We'd reached out to a number of times to present to you all, but schedules did not align. So he wanted to respond to some of your interest in the historical context of other charter revisions. And so that memo, I think you'll find some real good background on not only some of the specifics around when and how and why the charter was changed over the last 50 plus years, but also some specifics around community engagement for the last two charter commissions in 1975, 76 and 1985. The highlight from him is that you all are doing already a much better job in a very different era than past commissions had as far as community engagement, and he's encouraging you to keep up that good work. So with no further ado, I'll pass it on to Professor Nelson to share with us her perspective or her research on council mayor versus manager council.
Great. Thank you so much. Is my audio okay? First of all, I want to make sure. Okay.
Great. Yep.
So thank you for having me. I have a PowerPoint. I incorporated the chart that Lawrence showed you so that we can use that as part of the basis of discussion. And I'm happy to take questions at the end. So let me share the slides. Okay. So before I go into forms of government, I want to give you a little bit about my background. And I know that the stereotype of professors is that we all live in this ivory tower and that we're very detached from reality. And that's not the case for where I work. The UNC School of Government's mission is to improve the lives of North Carolinians and by improving government in the state of North Carolina. And so all of us, in addition to myself, I teach in the Master's of Public Administration program, so I teach graded courses, but I spend a lot of my time working with local officials, both elected officials and administrators, doing things like leadership training, strategic planning, helping local governments with discussions about form of government and structure and things like that. Another very important part of the value of the school of government is that we're nonpartisan and non-advocacy. So we train our General Assembly, newly elected General Assembly members, we train newly elected local government officials across the state. And so it's very important for us to not appear as biased. And so we take that very seriously. And so when I'm speaking to you tonight, my judgments are based on my education, my research, and my experience. As far as experience with form and structural change, I've talked to a lot of communities about possible options for their form of government. And this is my primary research area. So most of my research uses form of government as a variable to try to determine how local government performs in different ways. And then, as I said before, I do a lot of practical work as far as strategic planning and leadership training goes, as well as management training too. And then I am serving on the National Civic League's Model City Charter Steering Committee for the revision of the Model City Charter. Those of you who aren't familiar with the Model City Charter, it might be something you should consider looking up. And I think I give a link later on in the presentation. If not, I'll send it to you. But it's really been around for about 100 years, and every so many years they get a committee together to look at it and consider changes, and places that are newly incorporating or changing their charters often adopt the Model City Charter in their communities. And so it's a very important job to do. So as I'm doing this, I'm also working tomorrow. I have a meeting with them actually as we talk about revisions to the Model City Charter. This is the chart that you've been given. And so I'm going to use this to go through some of the differences between mayor, council, and council manager form. And sort of the elevator speech you can give people when you're trying to describe the difference between mayor, council, or council manager and council manager is you can say that mayor council form is very similar to the state level governments or the federal level government, in that you have separation of powers between the executive and legislative branches, whereas council manager government is modeled after American corporate board structure. So you have the citizens act as shareholders who vote for a board of directors, the city council, and the city council appoints the CEO, the manager. And so it was modeled after that. It started in Stanton, Virginia in 1908. So it is the reform model of government. The legislative authority is solely vested in the council and the mayor council form, and it's shared by the council and the mayor in the council manager form. As far as executive power in mayor council form, in most places, not in North Carolina, the mayor is the executive. North Carolina has mayor council form, and several other states do as well, where there are no executives at all. And so that's the case in North Carolina.
If everyone could mute, please. Sorry about that, Kim.
I think it's still, is that better? Okay. And so as far as the executive authority in a council manager form, in most places in the United States, and including California, the manager operates as both the CEO and the CAO, but the power is delegated to the manager by the elected board. The selection of the mayor in mayor council form is always elected. In council manager form, the mayor may be elected or may be chosen by the council. I didn't look up the statistics on this for California. Nationally, being selected by the council as a mayor is considerably less common than a generally elected mayor. Originally, when this form was first conceived, the idea was to remove some of the political machine power. And so the elected mayor was considered somewhat of a risk, a mayor elected at large, because of potential corruption from political machines. And so as first conceived by Richard Childs, who first wrote about the council manager form and promoted it, the mayor was to be chosen by council, but a lot of states require an elected mayor, and in other cases, local governments have just chosen to elect their mayor. So it's much more common nationally. Removal of the mayor in California can be done by a recall election, and in council manager form, it depends on how the mayor is selected, but recall, of course, is an option no matter what. Conditions for removal of the CEO. So in the case of the mayor council, this is the mayor. The mayor can be, again, removed through recall or the term limits. And then the CEO, the manager in a council manager form, can be removed at any time without cause. The mayor is not a member of council in the mayor council form in most places. There are a few exceptions throughout the United States, but in California, no. And the mayor is a member of council in the council manager form. And whether the mayor can vote with council, not in mayor council governments, but yes, or only in case of a tie with the council manager form. Again, for all of these, you can look nationally and there will be differences potentially. Appointment and removal of the CAO. So mayor council governments actually in close to half of mayor council governments that are above 50,000, we have a CAO as well as a mayor. And in a mayor council government with an executive mayor, it's typically the mayor who removes the CAO. In the council manager government, it's the council. The appointment and removal of department heads, again, this is the CEO's job. So whether it's a mayor or manager, that's who would do it. And then charters differ on whether or not council is required to confirm those appointments. Advisory boards, there's no rules on that. So if you guys want to, whatever you want to do on appointment of advisory boards, there's no data that shows or research that shows one way is better than another. And the variability is enormous on that. Policy development, the mayor, usually runs on a platform and can propose policies. The manager has a different role. The manager is to provide advising to the elected board and can recommend policy options, but should only do so based on professional experience, not for political reasons. The policy advice comes from staff. Mayor council governments often have, politically appointed staff in the mayor's office. The professional staff and council manager form, both the manager and the professional staff would provide advice in the council manager form. a veto authority. Again, there is variability on this, so this is something that can be changed, and it really doesn't change whether a mayor is an executive mayor or not. In North Carolina, the only mayor who has a veto is a non-executive mayor in a council manager form in Charlotte. In California, we have a mayor with a veto in San Bernardino in the council manager form, and at other times, mayors sometimes have veto, sometimes not, in the mayor council form. And finally, policy implementation. It's the mayor's job. There's no role for council. The council has less oversight in the case of the mayor council government than they would in the council manager form. The manager implements in the policy in the council manager form. I wouldn't say there's no role for council, because there are much more specific decisions and directives given by council for council manager form than there would be for mayor council form, typically. So that's a summary of that. Does anyone have any questions about that before we look at some of the patterns across the United States?
One quick clarifying question. What does CAO stand for?
Chief Administrative Officer, and CEO
Okay.
is Chief Executive Officer.
Okay, I guess I wanted to understand if there was an operational difference between a CEO versus a CAO. I kept thinking Chief Analyst Officer, and I didn't know what that role was.
Chief Administrative Officer is the generic form for the person who has day-to-day operational authority to run the government services at local level. And then CEO is the chief executive. So that person, is in charge of the executive branch of government as far as having the authority, to be in charge of the department heads, for example, leadership authority. It doesn't imply that saying the manager is CEO does not imply that the manager has independent executive authority, because executive and legislative authority really is in the hands of the council and the mayor in the council manager form. It's not in the hands of the manager independently.
Okay. So then in the chart that was sent to us with our agenda packet, where under the mayor council system, the language that says that a CAO is optional, what we're really saying is that in the mayor council system, if there was no CAO, the mayor handles the executive power, but also handles the administration.
Correct. Although, as I said, it's very uncommon in a community your size not to have a CAO as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And I see hands from Commissioner Meitsky and Commissioner Marshman. Commissioner Meitsky.
Yes, I have a quick question. One thing I don't see on here, it seems to me that the council should have a role in monitoring the implementation of policy. I know, and in your experience, is that typically in a charter that they describe how that happens? And it seems like it would be different whether a manager implements or the mayor implements, or the council may have a bit of a different role there.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I do have a slide on accountability at the end where I was going to talk about this. Most charters don't say anything specific about that. We actually, in the Model City Charter, it doesn't say anything, but we're concerned about that. And we're actually going to add some accountability language in there. Usually the charter says something very general about oversight in the council manager form, that, oversight sort of built into the council manager form, given the council is giving manager policy instructions that the manager is then fulfilling. And they do performance evaluations on the manager, and they, manager doesn't have that much discretion aside from what is delegated to him or her. With the oversight with the mayor council form is much more difficult because the incentives are different and because the structure is different. So with the mayor council form, it is still the council's obligation to exercise oversight. It's just harder for them to do so because the mayor has an independent role. The mayor's incentive isn't to please the council. The manager's incentive is to make sure the council is happy with his or her performance, right? Because that's how they keep their job. The mayor's incentive is usually to get reelected, to please his or her constituents. And therefore, it may be to the mayor's benefit to not be totally transparent with council. And that's what we see across the country sometimes. And so it can be difficult sometimes for councils to exercise oversight, more difficult than with the council manager form. Did that
It
answer the
seems like
question?
we should add a line item to the chart then that just says monitoring policy implementation and leave it at that for now.
Sure, we can do that. Thank you, Commissioner Minsky. Commissioner Marshman.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that we're looking at these and I think we're kind of talking about San Jose being council manager at the moment, but it's really a hybrid. And that's what the 85 commission did. For instance, here, the mayor does propose the budget, and that was considered a significant power shift from the last charter review. The mayor has his own staff doing, or her own staff doing analytical work and so on, not relying on the city staff. Proposing policy is the same as, preparing the budget. The mayor does a lot of that in San Jose. So just to keep in mind, we're not talking about two entirely separate things here. We've got a hybrid situation in San Jose.
So I would respectfully disagree somewhat for that, because the true hybrids in the United States, I would, when I wrote, I'd be happy to share a research paper I did on this. In my opinion, what makes a community a hybrid is when the lines are blurred between whether there's separation of powers or not, and unified powers, and somewhat empowering a mayor by giving the mayor first right to look at a budget may come close to that. But really, when we see true hybrids throughout the United States, those are cases like Kansas City, where the mayor appoints the manager. The mayor gets first look at the budget. The mayor has veto. The mayor can fire the manager, independent of council. And so those sorts of things are what we would call a true hybrid. Somewhat empowering the mayor. I wouldn't say make San Jose a hybrid government. I would say that it empowered the mayor a little bit. And quite frankly, I find true hybrids to be very problematic in the places that have them, because it makes it very difficult for management and staff to know who they report to, who their loyalties, who they're supposed to take direction from. So if you can be hired by one person and fired by another group of people, or vice versa, think about that in your own life. What would you do if you worked in that situation? It makes for a difficult work situation. So I don't believe in the best of both worlds idea that some communities seem to be sort of going to. There's not a lot of evidence that helps with performance. Well, there's actually no evidence that it improves performance.
Great, thank you. I see one question from Commissioner Lazat, and then I'd like to just, there's gonna be plenty of time for more questions. I just want to make sure that we can get through Professor Nelson's presentation. So Commissioner Lazat, let's hear from you, and then let's move forward.
Yeah, I just wanted to concur with Barbara Marshman. Maybe hybrid isn't the term of art that the speaker would use, but neither one of these charts is what's happening in San Jose. And I think it would have been really helpful to have a third column where we put in what exactly is going on in San Jose, because it's different. It's a lot different than either one of these. And I think that was Barbara's point, not so much the term of art of hybrid.
Yeah, duly noted, and that's the next step for this chart, that we will add that. And I also just want to note, speaking to some nomenclature issues that have come up. Empowered executive, in talking to Professor Nelson and seeing some of her work, has come up as an alternative form for strong mayor. So I think we might adopt some of that language moving forward, but it does seem that San Jose is an empowered executive form of council manager. And yeah, duly noted that we can, in this next version of this chart, reflect the actualities of San Jose. Okay, Professor Nelson, why don't you continue on your presentation?
Okay, so if we're looking at where we see how we see form of government break out across the United States, you see that in the top 10 largest cities by population in the United States, 6 of them are mayor council and 4 are council manager. But if you look more broadly, if we bring it to 25,000 and above, you can see that this shows you the number and percentages. You can see that the council manager form and the mayor council form, as you go into that still in very large places, mayor council has a slight edge. But once you get to large communities that are in middle range, 500,000 and above, council manager starts taking over as far as numbers go. And the council manager form overall in the United States is much more common than the mayor council form. This is using 2010 population figures. So San Jose would be under 1 million here. They wouldn't be in the million mark here. This also does not include the other forms of government in the United States, commission form and town meeting form that we have in the United States. If we look at California cities, the mayor council form versus council manager form. Council manager is much more common in California than mayor council is. If you are not a statutory city in the state of California, then you're able to have a charter form of government. And I will say one more thing about comparing the forms of government. The United States is unbelievably diverse, even within a single state, as far as our forms of government go. So when we talk about these patterns of forms, there are, little exceptions that have been made throughout the country and throughout a state that make these governments unique and make us, we have the most diverse local governments in the world. And it's interesting working with scholars from around the world because they don't understand why we don't have like one template for local government, but we don't even have 3 templates for local government. There's a lot more than that. So if we look at form of government change attempts, just to give you an idea of how often communities across the United States are thinking about changing the form of government where they actually go to a formal vote. Since 1990, this is municipal only, not county. We see that there have been 73 attempts to change from mayor council to council manager and 62 from council manager to mayor council. It was 58% success rate for the mayor council to council manager and 45% success rate from council manager to mayor council. As far as research findings go, I'm happy to share the full citations for these articles. When we do studies of form of government and these other variables, we aren't really trying to say one form is better than another necessarily. We're curious about what factors generally influence these types of variables, and we include form of government often in these studies. And when we do look specifically at form of government, it's because, we have conversations like this at the local level where we're looking at why should we choose one form over another. And so there isn't, though, a set of studies out there that say, let's look at a comprehensive set of variables and compare the 2 major forms of government and see what we come up with. There's nothing like that out there. So Everything are these discrete studies. So these are the most current studies looking at those variables. So you see my name's up there a lot. As I said before, this is all I do. So this is my life's work is local government form and structure. There's a fairly recent study on bond ratings by Dove. He's an economist, and the study showed that council manager form of government have better bond ratings. This was the second study to show this. There's a big IBM study several years before that found had the same findings. I would argue the Dove study was a little more rigorous. With my mentor, Jim Savara, who you'll probably read a lot about as you go through different articles. We did a study on innovation and the factors related to innovation that we saw more innovation in local governments that had council manager form. A recent study I did with my colleague Whitney Afonso on corruption found that the council manager form offered considerably lower risk for corruption, 57% less likely to have major corrupt acts than the mayor council form of government. And then we had a conflict study I did in 2011, showed greater conflict in the mayor council form. And this is dysfunctional conflict. Conflict in and of itself is not bad on an elected board or on any board. It's when conflict becomes personal and destructive that it's problematic. A 2020 study on budgetary solvency by Jimenez found that council manager form had better budgetary solvency. Public spending study by Coate and Knight showed that that there's lower spending in mayor council form. You have to be careful with anything on spending, though, just because certain places like to spend more money than other places culturally. That's a preference that a community has. But the most recent study on public spending, and there's been a number of studies on public spending, and there's not a lot of consistency in the findings, but the most recent one said mayor council form. Voter turnout. So there haven't been any studies in the past decade. Lauren's asked me to check on this. Prior to 2010, there were a number of studies that showed that voter turnout was higher in mayor council government. You have to be careful and read those studies critically because voter turnout is most heavily associated with whether or not it's an even number year election and whether you have district elections. So you have better turnout in both those cases. And so both of those are usually associated with mayor council form. So a lot of that washes out if you have district elections and you have even year elections in the council manager form. And then there's a lot of other research on form that's not about performance. It's not about which one's better or worse. It's just more descriptive about the different forms and about the roles that people play. And so there isn't a lot of other research on that's on performance specifically. Does anyone have any questions about the research?
Yeah, whose hand is up? I see Commissioner Segal. Why don't you go ahead, Commissioner Segal, Magnolia.
Hi. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. Are you able to provide us links to these articles? Perhaps later?
They are copyright protected. I can provide the full citation, but I can't. You should be able to access them in any public library, but I can't provide the actual article itself.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have run into that with some of the research I've done. I've considered reaching out to the institution to see if they would release it to the commission, but it takes some time, and I don't know if that's even really a practical consideration. I think at the very least, I can compile a citation list for this commission, and based on Professor Nelson's list here. Let's see. I saw Commissioner Monley's hand go up, and you're on mute.
You, yeah.
You go.
So I'm just wondering then, without being able to really look behind these studies, I don't see how they can relate to us in our research. They are a list of names and studies that have been done, but they don't seem to give us information that we can relate to our study.
Well, as I said, you can get the studies. You would have to go to San Jose University. I mean, I can't give you copyrighted material.
Oh, okay.
But this is this is peer-reviewed research. This is the only vetted research out there. So anything else you read is not going to be, that's publicly available, is not peer-reviewed, rigorous research.
Right. Can you tell us then how you relate these to the study that we're doing?
So it's not my role to tell you what you should do.
Right.
In my opinion, I've been studying form of government for a really long time. You know, your comments about San Jose not being a council manager forum, you know, it's much closer to the council manager forum than the mayor council forum.
Okay.
And so I would say that while you might change your form somewhat or change it entirely, I don't know. I don't think there is a lot of research to support some of the claims that are being made, that are made around the country, that mayor council is somehow superior to council manager. I've been trying to find that and I can't find it.
Well, I'm just trying to relate the list to us. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Monley. And I would suggest that you know, this is an opportunity to start to ask specifics about the nuances of potential policy recommendations that this commission might consider of our guest, Professor Nelson, and you know, what she's seen, how it plays out. You know, I do want to just make a side note is that after our last conversation, I think that what I'm committed to support you all is to start to track policy recommendations that do come up, so that we have a running list of basically ideas that are generated. We've heard some from other speakers. You know, I think some of you are getting to the point where you're potentially going to be suggesting some, but if there's kind of questions you have about sort of some of the different roles, like how would it work if there were veto power, that I think could be a good use of Professor Nelson's time on the call today. You know, because this is we can't really talk in generalities without, you know, it's just not going to get us very far, especially as far as the commission's work. And I totally understand what you're saying is that these are generalities, you know, in this list. But you know, this is a process of unfolding, and this is getting us closer to canonical sort of peer-reviewed forms of research that we can use. So with that, you know, kind of common recommendation, I'll move on to Commissioner Matsumura, and then Commissioner Sanchez and Percival, and then Diep.
Thank you. I have two questions. I'll put both of them out there. One is just building on Commissioner Monley's question. I wonder if there are recommendations that you can offer us for how we look at variables in a city. Besides, you know, you've put out population size, but what variables do we need to consider in order to translate research or the experiences of other cities to ours? Like, are there best practices within your field for sort of saying, okay, you can't, you know, this is apples to oranges versus this is apples to apples. And then my second question is whether there's any available research that's not better or worse research, but that looks at issues of accountability and representation, because that's what we've been tasked to look at. So for example, I've seen research at the federal level looking at which advocates are most consistently successful in their efforts to impact legislation. And I'm wondering whether there's any information about the success of advocacy efforts or certain categories of advocates in achieving their goals based on form of government. Thank you.
So thank you. I think when I show you these studies, I'm trying to, I guess I should give you a little more explanation about the fact that, for example, looking at the corruption study I did, that was 20 years of data with every single city in the US with populations of 10,000 and above in it for 20 years, including San Jose. Every single city in the United States is represented in there for 20 years. And it looked at major corruption convictions across that 20-year time period. And it compared multiple variables. Many variables were in there. But the only variable that was substantially significant and protected a local government from major corrupt acts was the council manager form. That was the only thing. Poverty had a slight impact, but so these findings are telling you what, when we look across the United States for long periods of time, often we can see patterns in the data that tell us, that give us an indication that there's a good thing there. And that's what we're starting to uncover with some of these studies. The bond rating study, you care about fiscal stability of your community, right? So good bond ratings, good budgetary solvency, those are indicators of good fiscal stability. And these big peer-reviewed studies look at a lot of communities over a long time and control appropriately. And then they go through a blind peer review process where other scholars have to weigh in and decide whether or not the research was sound and valid. So as far as which variables to consider, I think these are some of the most important ones. I think that some variables that you're going to talk about have to do with what your community values the most. So you have to talk about what your community values. And if there's something specific that your community values, and I can help Lawrence connect with some research on that, I'd be happy to do that. You mentioned accountability and representation. I do have a slide at the end on accountability. It's harder in proving accountability.
Do you want to speak to that slide now? Do you want to? I feel like that we might just get a lot of the same questions. Okay, please. Yeah. Why don't you just move forward on that slide?
So in government, accountability comes from 4 sources. It comes from the law, rules, laws regulating what government officials can and can't do. It comes from transparency, open meetings, open records acts, a government that values transparency and takes action independently of the law to be transparent. It comes from oversight, and it comes from professional standards. So when we talk about comparing forms of government on accountability, and this goes for whether you want to talk about council manager and mayor council, or you want to add a commission in, you want to add town meeting in, you want to talk about the hybrids, you can look at where accountability, these 4 sources, and which form, given the way it's structured, will give you the greatest transparency. This idea that that the only type of accountability that matters is electoral accountability is just one little piece of how local governments ensure accountability of the people who work in their government. As I said before, for example, the oversight function tends to be much more rigorous when there's unified powers, legislative and executive in the same branch body. Oversight's harder with mayor council forum. The public, as far as having the ability to elect a mayor versus not elect a manager, that only comes every 2 or 4 years, depending on what the terms are. and the manager can be fired every single day. So, you know, there's a difference between holding someone to account and being accountable. And holding someone to account means an external force is being applied to make sure that person's accountable, like the electoral process. But being accountable comes from a much broader set of sources of accountability, including professional standards and a code of ethics that the managers have to operate on. So I do think that there are some studies that look that, so the studies that you're referring to on accountability, and I can share those with Lawrence, most of them are opinion, are based on perspective. So they'll survey council members and mayors from across the country, and they'll say, you know, they'll ask questions about accountability, and they'll ask about their government and how high quality the accountability is and those sorts of questions. And then they compare by form of government. You know, I'm happy to share those studies. You know, I think those perspective-based studies aren't great. They're people's opinions, right? But I'm happy to share. There's been a couple of those that are out there that talk about accountability that way. Did that address your question?
I don't want to take too much more time, but I'm curious whether there are better measures, right? Like, for example, how frequently a mayor or council member is recalled. That's, you know, not necessarily the kind of instability that you want, but it is sort of an indication of are we really using elections as a form of accountability, you know, of holding someone to account, to use your language. So, you know, or there's this other piece of whether advocates are successful in moving agendas, which then, you know, it's subjective of how do you want that. But I'm just curious whether there are any attempts besides just saying, do you feel like your mayor is accountable? Do you feel like your council is accountable, to look at issues of accountability and representation?
So recall throughout the United States is not as common as you might think. And so fewer than half of municipal governments actually have that, you know, that the citizens have that ability in the United States. So there, to my knowledge, unless there's been something done in California, I haven't seen a study like that. and certainly nothing that can, I mean, it's very uncommon in a council manager forum. There's been like some, there was a study, a New York Times article about impeachment of mayors a few years ago, but it certainly wasn't done in any way that was rigorous research. You know, as far as the part you were saying about advocacy, local government is very different from federal and state government. And I think that, you know, it's really personal judgment as to whether that is a positive or a negative. So, you know, whether a mayor is able to get their, you know, their platform passed through the local government. There have been some studies on that. They weren't really specifically looking at form of government, to my knowledge, on those studies, but there are some studies out there like that. But measuring accountability in a way as you're suggesting, I haven't seen that done in any way except from perception based.
Okay, great. Professor Nelson, do you have more slides than this, or are you close to the end of your presentation?
Just one more slide.
Okay, let's finish that, and then I have a stack here, which I'll get to.
Okay, so just some broad points about form. No form provides a mayor with policy-making authority independent of council, only in cases where the council has passed a charter provision or an ordinance or even something in the emergency powers that gives a mayor specific policy-making authority. Do they have that? Emergency powers in all forms do not allow major policy change independent of council unless it was previously delegated through charter or ordinance. The term weak mayor, I want to advise all of you not to use that to refer to council manager form. There are weak mayor governments in the United States. Those are weak mayor council governments, usually non-executive mayors or mayor that's called the CEO but has no authority, no executive authority. And so those exist throughout the United States, and those are the weak mayors. The council manager form is not a weak mayor form. And as I said before, the National Civic League Model Study Charter that I'm working on, the revision for that charter right now as part of the steering committee, currently only endorses the council manager form. At one point, it had two options, mayor council or council manager, mayor council with a CAO, sorry, and a council manager, but they no longer endorse the mayor council form. All right, questions? Other
Great.
questions?
Yeah. So I'm just going to go through the stack here. Encourage people to be concise with their questions so that we can get as many questions in as possible. And I'll start with Commissioner Sanchez.
Yeah. Yeah. Real quick. Just wanted to see if we can't get some insight from those individuals who have worked or been a part of a mayor council type of governance or a council manager type of governance. Get some insight from those individuals in terms of their experience with the different types of governance structures, and I think that would maybe give us some more background as we move forward in making the critical decisions that we've been asked to do, and you know, and of course with the mission that we have is moving forward to possibly making changes in the structure that we have right now with the city of San Jose. So anyway, so I don't know how that would how we could do that, but I think that would be interesting to, again, to get some insight from individuals who have been involved in these two types of governance structures, and kind of give us a little background in terms of what their experience has been. And so anyways, that's something I would like to take a look at.
Great. We have scheduled, we have holds for our next meeting for former city manager and former mayor of San Jose to present on just that that topic. And we're trying to get one other person to round out the perspective. So thank you again for that interest.
There's also a couple of studies that survey people who have been both city managers and CAOs in mayor council form. They're not really current, but I can give you those citations too.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the questions we have here on our stack before we move on are Commissioners Percival, Dieppe, Marshman, Lazat, Monley, Tran. Okay, so Commissioner Percival.
Yeah, thank you. And Professor Nelson, thank you very much for your time. I know it's a late your time, so really appreciate you spending time with us. And I just, Lawrence, I just wanted to put this out there. I don't know if we'll be able to do this, but certainly I have access to many of these articles through San Jose State. So if the commission members would like to get access to some of these, I can help offline with some of that if that's something I can do within my role. So
yeah, I was wondering, I just don't want to transgress copyright as far as distribution, because there are distribution constraints on some copyright licenses. So, but let's talk. I'll definitely follow up with you on that.
Sure.
Yeah,
no problem.
Yeah.
My question was more along the lines of community trust in government. I know this wasn't one of the factors that you had brought up specifically, but for a lot of community members, the mayor is kind of the symbol of local government. And I know in San Jose, that's always been a sort of sticking point for mayors, is that, you know, when the public thinks of local government and what it's doing or not doing, they think of the mayor. And then the mayor turns around and says, well, you know, I can only do so much because, you know, he or she is constrained by sort of the rules and structures of city government. So I'm wondering if you have some sense of what research has shown about public trust in government under these different forms. You know, if they feel like government works better for them or pays more attention to their issues that are important to them, particularly among groups who might be often marginalized in local politics, if there's a greater sense of trust or responsiveness in different forms. So thank you.
So I haven't seen anything on looking at trust in government by form of government, but I will do another check and see if I see anything specifically on that. I will say that until very recently, local governments were somewhat immune from the distrust that the public feels towards the federal and state level governments. It used to be this really steep drop off in lack of trust when you got to the local level, and it was really high for U.S. Congress. That was at the top. But local level is showing some increasing distrust, unfortunately, the last 10 years. But I will look. I don't know whether anyone has done that yet, but I will look for it, and I will send Lawrence any sites I find on that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Commissioner Diep.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Professor. I enjoyed your presentation. I like I like your framing of one form of government being more like the state government and the other one being like a board and the CEO being the mayor. Along those lines, I'm curious on this notion of, I guess, responsiveness to public sentiment or the will of the people, quote unquote. And in San Jose, we have an elected mayor, but we have the council manager form of government. And that's kind of, for lack of a better word, a hybrid, right? It's not the state form where the mayor has a veto and is the governor's figure. But it's not the city council manager form where the council elects the mayor, or the mayor seat is rotating every year, like in some cities. So in San Jose, you have an elected mayor, like Professor Percival was saying, and sometimes that person, he or she, wins on a platform, and then that agenda is not executable because you have to kind of garner a majority on the council, and that's through district voting. So can you kind of comment on how to, exert kind of the will of the people? And also, if you could give me insight into when you're comparing city manager form of government versus mayor council, how many of those city manager form of governments are district elected versus at-large elected councils?
So first I'll say that the majority of council manager forms have elected mayors in the United States. That's the mayor selected by the council is not as common as people may think. I have the data on district versus at large for all cities 10,000 and above that I can run and share with Lawrence. I don't have it memorized. I wish I did, but there's close to 4,000 cities in that category. So I'll have to run it. This, I hear this a lot. I talk to a lot of communities across the country, and this is probably the most common sort of complaint about the council manager form. But I don't know I don't know whether, it's a very persuasive argument for the public, and it's a very compelling argument for the public. But don't the council members represent the will of the people too? They were elected as well. So I'm not sure why it's a bad thing to have to find consensus on a board to make decisions. That's the way the system was set up. And so, I've sat in council and commission meetings across this country so many times, so many communities. And I sat in one with almost a hybrid government like you're talking about, but it was at the county level. And I'll never forget this this board literally tabled every single item on their agenda over and over and over again for like 2 years. Never made a decision. They could never reach consensus. And so my point is that working together and finding consensus is something that has to happen no matter what your form of government is. And that's what makes government work. And so I don't think it's a bad thing that you have to work together and reach consensus among a set of elected officials who are all representing the will of the people.
Great, thank you. So I have Commissioners Marsman, Lazat, Monley, Tren, and Barocio. Commissioner Marshman. You're on mute. There you are.
Sorry, in talking about the balance of powers between with the mayor and council and a council manager forms, you know, at some point we get to what you call a hybrid, and you say that's really bad. And it just occurs to me the last charter commission considered, and I guess some of the folks who spoke to us favored a proposal to keep the structure of the city manager running administration, but giving the mayor power to hire and fire the city manager. And I think there was some other department head, might have been planning, that they were interested in at the time. Does that shift? Is that shift something that you would say as a harmful kind of hybrid? Or, I mean, it does not change the need to get a council's agreement on policy and so on. But if policy, as the mayor sees it, is not being carried out, and you know, the mayor wants to fire someone, he or she could do it.
Yeah, that's basically a mayor council form of government then. Yeah, that's a true hybrid, or it's mayor council. Council manager form is unification of powers in the body of the council and the mayor together.
Okay. So that would push it over to not a good thing in your view. That is what you, I think, said earlier.
So, I mean, to me, that almost pushes it all the way over into mayor council. So I don't have anything. I'm not going to advise against a mayor council form of government specifically. What I'm saying is when the people who work for government can no longer tell who they should take direction from, it can be a problem. I mean, it's going to be a problem, right? Naturally. Go look at Kansas City history and the court battles that happened between the mayor and council over firing of the manager, and see how much it cost the city of Kansas City, one of the very true hybrids in the United States. Very limited number of true hybrids, and Kansas City is one of them. And they spent years in court over the firing of the manager, the mayor wanting to fire the manager and the council saying no. So, there's evidence that it causes problems.
But that wouldn't be, I mean, clearly the mayor did not have the power to fire the manager or in a charter, or else it would not have been mired in the courts, right?
The mayor has the power to, the mayor does have power to hire. The mayor does not have the power to fire, but what the mayor said was that the contract was up for renewal and he didn't want to renew it, and so he had the right not to renew it.
Okay.
So that's how it got that way.
Okay. I'll let it go. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lazat, your hand was up. Do you still have a question?
No, I do not.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Munley, your hand was up as well. Nope. Fantastic. Commissioner Tran.
My questions were already asked. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Commissioner Barocio. And you're muted.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you, Professor Nelson, for your expertise and sharing your time with us. I have two questions, if I may. One of them is, what does your research show around organizational culture shifts with these two forums? How do department heads shifting, or possibly shifting every 4 years or 8, impact the outcomes that a city wants, right? And then the second question, along the lines of effectiveness, how does an elected like mayor, their professional expertise to hire department heads and to monitor and to do that whole accountability piece. How does it fare in the models, right? Because typically anyone can run for mayor, right? And once someone is elevated by the people into that position, there's a whole complex set of responsibilities, right? So how does it fare in both cases?
So I'll do your first question, and then I have a clarification for the second question, because I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. But the organization culture, I mean, that's a fascinating research study that's never been done. It would be great to know that in some conclusive way. I'm working on a study right now where we're looking at organizational org chart changes over time. And so, you know, a new mayor gets elected or a new manager gets appointed, how much change happens over time. So we need to get that first before we can look at the harder to measure culture perspective. First of all, do we know that there's a lot of structural change below the org chart, in the org chart, in the lower levels below the manager or the mayor? And then do we know that, and then we can look at culture. And so we're just now starting some work on that. And so unfortunately, it's not ready yet. And then your second question was about people who work in government. Could you ask me that again?
Yes. So like, for example, one of our council members, I remember he was speaking to a small group of people, and he said, what it took me to win a campaign are skills that I left at the door as soon as I became a city council member. And then every 4 years, I go back to those skills and I put them in place. So then I take that to the mayor's role, where perhaps the skills of a mayor in the mayor council role, or like not the role, but the model, where they have to hire and assess department heads. I wonder if the research shows that does an elected official come with those skills, or do they campaign with those skills and telling the people, hey, I'm a good person for this job because I can do this and I have these skills? Or is their platform totally different, that once they become elected, that the skills and the administrative skills are not necessarily a good match? And I just wonder what the research says about that.
Yeah, so there's no direct research on that. I think that that is one of the fundamental reasons the council manager form was created. Just like an American corporation would not hire someone who doesn't understand the business to be CEO, the people who created the council manager form believe that you shouldn't hire someone to run a city who doesn't have experience running a city or education or anything. That the professional manager brings professional norms and professional experience that is important to have for the job, especially when you get into bigger cities and the budgets are bigger. And this is what my hypothesis for the corruption and why it's so much more prevalent in the mayor council form. I believe one of the reasons is that mayors aren't skilled at hiring, understanding public budgeting and understanding, public budgeting and private budgeting are not the same thing. Any of you who have governmental accounting experience know this, right? It's completely different. And so, that's a special skill set that's required. And the internal controls that are required in government are so much more extensive than what you would see in the private sector. And so that was half of the theory behind why corruption is worse in the mayor council. The other half of the theory was that the incentives that are at play, that the electoral incentives, the political process, the political environment that fully political city, which is a mayor council form, operates under, means that there are a lot more attempts at bribery, pay for play kinds of things happening, because the system is more amenable to that than you would see in the council manager form. Is that the mayor and the council manager form cannot independently accept a bribe and then change policy independent of the council. So yeah, there's not anything direct on those skill sets that are needed. There's been a number of books on, the best mayors in both kinds of government. There's several books by my mentor about the facilitated mayor. And it describes the skill set that's most effective in local government for a mayor to be most successful. And it works under both forms of government. So.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Borosio. I'm going to move us forward. I would encourage everybody to continue to think about these questions. We only have about 5 minutes left before we need to move on to public comment and the rest of our agenda. I want to hear from someone we haven't heard from before, so I'm going to ask Commissioner Posadas to ask a question of Professor Nelson.
Thank you very much. I was curious, what role, if any, does the size of the districts play in the council manager form of government? For example, does council manager form work better if the representation ratios are lower? For example, 1 representative per 50,000 residents versus 1 representative versus 100,000 residents.
So I've spoken at a number of community meetings where communities were considering changing the way that council members were elected, both changing the size of districts and changing the number of districts, or changing from at-large to all districts. And I'll tell you that today, there is not a great deal of evidence that any of it matters anymore. That we do see greater turnout when we have district elections, but there's no sort of optimal size. People have done studies to see if there's an optimal size. There's really nothing there. It used to be that we would get much better racial representation on council with district elections. But today, as most communities are more diverse throughout the community, that's less likely to happen. And it did not in any way promote gender diversity on elected boards. And so, when I give these presentations, I say it's just citizen choice. There's no evidence that any way is better than another way, except in the fact that when you have districts, it's more likely, and the smaller the district, this would be the case, it's more likely that that individual elected official is going to get to know his or her constituents better than if that elected official comes from a large district. And so, but there's not been any study that says this is the perfect size, unfortunately. They've done studies trying to find, is there an optimal size, but they have not found one.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, we have 2 more hands up. If we can keep the questions real concise, we can get to you both. Commissioner Segal?
Hi, and thank you again. I'm wondering if there's any research or any discussions you've had with your peers regarding professional city managers being elected by the public in a way, for example, that the mayor is elected.
Yeah, this came up in a model city charter discussion. If the manager is elected, the manager is then a mayor. I mean, it's I'm not sure where that comes from, but that would be making the manager a mayor.
It would, I guess, the prerequisite for running would be that they have the professional education and experience.
They would be banned from the International City County Management Association if they ran for elected office at the local level. It is a violation of the code of ethics for a manager to engage in political activity. That's another part of the essence of the form, is that managers are do not participate in partisan politics in any way, shape, or form. And if they do, they're banned for life from ICMA.
Thank you.
Great. And last question from Commissioner Matsumura.
Thank you so much, and thank you again, Professor Nelson. I'm curious what the research shows around the hiring and firing of department heads by electeds, because we've been looking at the mayor in relation to the manager, but just, you know, if there's anything about electeds in general and a level down from the manager to the department heads. Thank you again.
I did a study early on when I was still a PhD student where I looked at the CAO qualifications of the CAO in mayor council form versus council manager form to see if the choice of CAO was politically motivated in the mayor council form. And that study showed that the CAOs typically in the mayor council form have some political relationship with the mayor. They've known the person before. In some cases, they worked on the mayor's campaign. They typically have an MBA, not an MPA. They are less likely to be certified managers through the International City County Management Association, things like that. Studies on department heads have not, there's not been anything on that.
All right. Well, Professor Nelson, it's 10:30 your time, so we're gonna let you go and start your bedtime ritual. Hopefully you can do that in post haste. On behalf of all the commissioners and the commission itself, thank you for your time. I'll connect with you about the follow-up items. Really appreciate your commitment to this work and the time you shared with this commission. And if other questions come up from commissioners, I think this is a really good Professor Nelson and her network are a great resource for us. So please capture and share those questions so that we can make sure that you have the information you want to start to get into the discussion. So Professor Nelson, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
All right.
Good night.
And I'm going to turn it back to Chair Ferrer to move us forward on our agenda.
So thank you, and thanks to all your questions. And again, Professor Johnson's been very gracious and generous with her time and resources, so I know that we will be able to continue our dialogue. If there are questions that you had or follow-up that you think we should do, please let us know so that we can follow up with her. She's also given us a lot of resources around the model cities piece, which I think will also be informative, especially when we get to the recommendation side. And now I'm going to open up the public comment for this item. And I'm going to ask the clerk to start introducing our speakers. Anyone who wants to address the commission on this item, which is the study session on the different forms of government.
The first speaker is Paul Soto.
Thank you. That was a very interesting conversation. It was just like it was informational. I respect the questions that Commissioner Monley had asked. You know, how is this relevant to San Jose? And I couldn't find anything. And it was very descriptive and informative, but just not intuitive in terms of what it is that this body has been asked to do of the city. What I would like to say, though, is that you can't make a law that in order to establish the law, illegal means was had in order to establish the law. Now, in the first 2 years, using San Jose's charter as a reference point in 1850, that law was the establishment of the charter was at the expense of Native Americans. There was decapitations that went on here in San Jose. I have documentations to support that. I'm sure the California Room has copious amounts of information to support that fact that the decapitations of Native Americans were had right here in San Jose for the first 2 years that it was a state capital. So I find it odd that we're arguing about a charter that was established in 1850 when the means by which that charter was established was that savage brutality. And so I think a real actual history lesson would be helpful in this, because that was set the precedent, because you have the redlining policies that deprived Mexicans, Chicanos, of the democratic participation in the democratic process. Okay, it deprived them of economic power. it also deprived them of democratic power. And so I think until we get to a place where we can really discuss the savage brutality and the economic deprivation and political impotency that was.
Thank you, Mr. Soto. Next speaker.
Next speaker is phone number ending 5140.
Yeah, typically city manager forms of government aren't very good. Local governments are the worst of all of our governments, but the ones that are closest to us. I look at a city that's been mismanaged for decades, if not almost half of a century, due to just poor management of city manager, mayor. I don't know what the answers are, but the one answer I have is to get rid of Sam Liccardo because he's not very good. He keeps doubling down on a lot of wrong ideas, positions. The city manager, he's a bureaucrat, or she, it can be he or she, is a bureaucrat. In this case, it's he. And you just see a city that is, has had a lot of riches throughout the last century, and it's completely blown it. I mean, it's embarrassing when people come out of town and you bring them to downtown San Jose. It looks horrible. Suburban sprawl. We have a terrible power grid. The city mayors throughout the decades, they just make just terrible decisions. I really don't know what the answer is. There just needs to be better mayors, better city managers, better city council people, because this city's awful. I mean, it's a travesty. It looks like Detroit in certain parts of. We're in what? One of the richest zip codes in the world with Silicon. This is the capital of the Silicon Valley. I mean, Mayor McHenry built that convention center. They couldn't even handle a computer convention. They had to go to San Francisco because they built it with like cheap labor, cheap equipment, cheap everything. This city's a disaster. I don't know. I don't know what would make it good, but maybe getting rid of the city manager would be good. Then we could really see how screwed up Sam Liccardo really is. He'll have no check or balance or anything. But in general, just the city.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Elizabeth Kamya.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Kamya. I am the chair of labor with the South Bay NAACP on the executive committee. The NAACP disagreed with the strong mayor in the summer. We strongly believe that the community should have say in this. We're glad that there's a commission. But with a strong mayor, you don't get the same say as you would with a community with their elected officials. If the concern that was brought up is firing and hiring department heads like the police, then we need to really look at our police chief and the position, and maybe that should be an elected position. Let's look at environmental justice. And for those people on the call saying that San Jose is a disaster, I disagree. I think the city is filled with heart. I feel like the city is filled with innovation. And I think it's because people elect strong council members to represent their interests. Most of the time, these districts aren't heard and they're overlooked. The NAACP has also questioned what the impact of the act to limit urban sprawl and its impact on affordable housing and affordability. And I want to touch on some other points that the NAACP has long suggested that the independent police auditor be provided additional powers, such as power of subpoena and consideration to be given to the auditor becoming of an elected position. But I really just want to stress that a council manager system is in the best interest of the community and of the people. And at the end of the day, we're serving the residents of San Jose, the community members of San Jose, and we want to build a San Jose for all, not just the tourists coming in for the big attractions of downtown. A San Jose that represents and really uplifts everyone. So thank you so much for your time. Yeah, take care.
Thank you, Ms. Kamai. This next speaker.
Norman Klein. This says that Mr. Klein, he's using an older version of Zoom. He needs to update his Zoom in order to speak. He may have, I see that his hand went down. He may have received that. If he comes back, we'll let him speak then.
Tony, I just promoted him to panelist so that he could speak right now, and then I'll take him back to attendees after he speaks, if possible.
Okay. Okay, Norman, go ahead. Norman, can you speak? I show that you're unmuted, but we cannot hear you. And it could be that your software is outdated. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next person and we'll see if Mr. Klein can update his software. Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thank you for the presentation. It was, I found it fairly informative. It was, I guess, you know, we're growing to consider things more than just hybrid, and we live in a city that we can be inventive. And it was interesting to learn how different forms work and what they're called. And so overall, it was a very good experience for myself, and a really good track that I really like the meetings of this week and last week a lot. And yeah, I like the presenters and like what you're doing so far. So thank you and keep up the good work. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bleekman. Next speaker.
And the next speaker is San Jose AACSA.
Hi, my name is Helen Casa, and I am the Policy and Advocacy Coordinator with the African American Community Service Agency. And, you know, one of the things that I just wanted to touch on is that it's within the charter's purpose to, you know, improve the accountability, representation, and inclusion. So I hope that within this, we don't stay only on the discussion of strong mayor, or quote unquote, for lack of better words, weak mayor, but we also consider how we can develop more inclusion on issues such as, you know, climate strategy and environmental justice, such as the NAACP said, community engagement, and even looking at things like the digital divide. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Sorry, this is the final speaker unless somebody else raises their hand. Yeme Girma. Yeme Girma.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Yemi Girma and I live in District 10. Clearly in 1985, when the charter was last broadly discussed by the commission, this community was a much different place. It is vital that the Charter Review Commission broadly and look at all the area of the charter. The NAACP has long suggested that the independent police auditor be provided additional powers, such as the power of subpoena, and that consideration be given to the auditor becoming an elected position. The NAACP has also questioned the impact of the Act to limit urban sprawl and its effects on affordable housing and affordability. Is sprawl a longstanding institutional effort to keep affordable housing and people of color out? Let's look at the environmental justice versus the longstanding excuses about protecting the environment on the backs of those on the lower rungs of the socioeconomic ladder. The community should also have more say in the selection of the police chief. We should explore if the chief should be an elected position or should the chief be subject to a recall like the city manager. In light of the SJPD's recent killing of David Tovar unarmed, where they shot up an apartment complex, this is a very important matter to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garma. Is there?
Yeah, another hand went up. Alina.
Good evening, everybody. Alina. So as a San Jose resident, I would like
the commission to add to their scope of work, and an investigation to determine all the ways the charter as it exists now gets into the way of equity and inclusion, and investigate ways it can be updated to promote equity, because promoting equity through this process is in the direction that council gave to this commission, so it's not mission creep. And adding to Helen's comment, I agree that the commission should also be prioritizing the process of civic engagement, as this has been an ongoing discussion since day one that I know all commissioners have feel also similarly and have shared their concerns about the process of civic participation and community engagement in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Mr. Klein available?
Mr. Klein is there, but he did not re-raise his hand.
Okay. That concludes the public comment then.
Actually, Matt King just raised his hand, and then Norman Klein's. I'm going to go to Norman first, since he had, and then I've got some more hands that just went up.
Thank you.
We're going to start with Norm.
I am having some computer problems. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I thought the professor was excellent. I thought her reviews, and she's extremely well qualified. I thought some of the comments were not very applicable to San Jose per se, especially the comments about redistricting. It doesn't really matter because it's up to the people, et cetera. I thought that was kind of odd. I thought a lot of her data, which I can't see originally, but I really would want to focus on large cities, over 1 million people. And I think anything below 400,000 or 500,000 residents, including like Sacramento even, doesn't apply to San Jose. When you're representing 100,000 people as a city council person, that's dramatically different than representing 10,000. As a former mayor of a small city, I really like the city council form of government. I start not liking it in very large cities, over 1 million people. Then you get a situation where a city council person representing 100,000 people almost is like a congressperson. And they have professional staff, professional offices, a budget. That doesn't exist in any of the other 14 cities of Santa Clara County. So when you're talking about these issues, it's really important to talk about large cities, not smaller cities. And when you put in the small cities in statistics, it warps out everything. Everything becomes suspect because it really becomes a apples and orange situation. So if we're talking about changing San Jose, 1 million people with city councilmen representing 100,000 people, you have to compare that to other like cities, not Saratoga or Cupertino or Palo Alto. I think it's very important. I think she missed an opportunity to kind of extrapolate and show that part of this problem. Thank you very much, by the way. You're doing great.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Next speaker.
Matt King.
Good evening, everybody. Matt King, representing Sacred Heart Community Service. Just want to add my 2 cents about, again, not keeping the focus of this commission on strong mayor and electoral dates. The 5th direction this commission was given was to look at anything having to do with accountability and representation and inclusion. We can also call that equity. And just reminding you, some folks have talked about mission creep, and it's right there in the direction you were given to look at things that will improve accountability, representation, and inclusion. So please go forward boldly with this effort and do what you were asked to do and do what the community needs you to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Next speaker.
Alex Shore.
Good evening, commissioners. Hi, my name is Alex Shore, Executive Director of Catalyze SV. Just want to build off a comment from Alina earlier. It's really great to see the discussion about community engagement. It is near and dear to the heart of Catalyze SV and creating a better process that gets a greater diversity fully representative of our community involved in the process. So just appreciate your service to the community and looking at issues of community engagement as part of your process. Have a wonderful rest of your meeting. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Short. And next speaker.
SVBC admin.
Thank you. This is Shiloh Ballard, speaking on behalf of myself. And I wanted to echo the comments of a couple folks before me. I was planning on speaking on the next agenda item, but I think it also fits here. And those comments have to do with the scope of the commission and making sure that the commission is looking at centering equity in how we govern this city. And I'm really excited at the prospect of being able to do a lot of deep self-reflection and really use this conversation to make sure that issues around racism, sexism are addressed through how the city is governed. So thank you very much. And thank you all for doing this work. It's really fun to listen in and hear just interesting topics discussed. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Ballard. Is there any more speakers?
Yeah, we have several. So the next three are Walter Hudson, Gabriella Gupta, and Jeffrey Buchanan. First up is Walter Hudson.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I enjoyed the presentation, but as with most academics, it was broad strokes, and you as the charter are going to have to find the willing canvas on which to paint a new picture. Here is what I see are the three major categories of importance for our city going forward: a strong and resilient budget structure, a refurbished police accountability, and some semblance of a forward-thinking municipal housing policy. Now, I looked through the city charter and none of these were mentioned by name, which means it's up to us as citizens and you as the Charter Review Commission to figure out how the practical things, issues of which I speak, get lodged into the institutional memory and intelligence and power of the city through the charter. I wish you all the best in your work, and thank you for this evening's conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Next speaker.
Gabriella Garzan Gupta.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Gabriella Garzon Gupta. My pronouns are she, hers, and I am a San Jose resident. I'm calling in and just adding on to the comments from my previous commenters, urging for a continued focus on accountability and outreach to all of our San Jose residents. City politics, first and foremost, are about involving our city of residents, and that means we can say equity, but we need to make sure that we're putting it into practice, and that means making sure that our politics are accessible for everyone. Just wanted to make that comment. Thank you for all the work you're doing, and thank you for the study session.
Thank you, Ms. Garza Gupta. Next speaker, please.
Jeffrey Buchanan.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Jeffrey Buchanan, Policy Director at Working Partnerships USA. As many of the other speakers tonight have said, certainly the work of this commission, you have important work ahead of you in looking at the questions of structure. Certainly the questions of when we move our mayoral date, though we've discussed it less in the last couple of public commission hearings, there's want to reaffirm there's just widespread public support. The polling data is pretty clear on the community's support for moving that mayoral election to presidential years. And in terms of representation, the data on who votes in presidential years versus who's voting in off-year elections shows that if we really want to have a mayor that represents the totality of San Jose, we would be much better served by moving that election date. And I would know that's on the upcoming agendas, but just want to make sure that the commission doesn't lose focus on that very important issue. Other than that, would echo other speakers. around the work plan, ensuring that we're leaving space for interrogating additional parts of the charter and what we can do to improve accountability, particularly on issues of racial and economic justice. How are we ensuring that this most important document is as inclusive of the totality of the city of San Jose, that we're ensuring that community members have voice, that we have accountability across all these different areas of policy that the charter currently touches or could potentially touch, based on what we're seeing in best practices from other jurisdictions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan. Next speaker.
Mr. Buchanan was the final speaker. No new hands were raised.
Thank you. All right, so now I want to, just for the public's view, just a reminder that these are study sessions. So the commission is studying. We're looking at questions, doesn't conclude anything, but just gives us the expertise of a national expert researcher to be able to help us start to continue to think and move through these questions. I want to move us now to our old business, which is a review, first of all, of the schedule, an update on the budget proposal, and the budget proposal that Tony has presented to us. First is the review of the schedule itself, Lawrence.
Sure. Let me share my screen and just point out the revisions we made to the work plan based on the recommendations or requests from commissioners last week or 2 weeks ago. So what we did was we are here March 22nd, review of the nuances between council, manager, and mayor council forms of government and research on effectiveness. April 5th, we wanted to dive into San Jose's current system of governance, and we have former city manager Deborah Fagoni and former mayor Ron Gonzalez queued up for that right now. And then we, on the suggestion of at least one commissioner, was to, we just heard about the comments from the public. We haven't talked about the role of districts and timing for district elections, so we wanted to move that up to April 19th. And if we can cover that and start to get into some specifics of comparative cities across the country, we'll do that. Still working on guests for that. This is all subject to any revisions you all have about our study session schedule, which I imagine we'll get into shortly here. And then a session on power and accountability metrics and mechanism for various governance roles. And to reflect the desire of commissioners to at least keep moving through the Memorial Day break, we did propose a public hearing sometime between the May 17th and the June 14th meeting, during which the May 17th meeting, we thought that the commission could prepare some of the questions that they had for the public and start to get into the discussion of the additional measures for consideration, what that might look like as far as the third bucket we've been talking about, or that bullet point 5 in the directive or the resolution creating the Charter Review Commission. The rest of the structure is pretty much the same, just moved down further. You'll see we're getting further and further down the calendar year. I do want to remind commissioners that you are tasked with preparing a report for council by a date in December, which escapes me right now. So we have a little wiggle room, but we are starting to get, as we move forward, we're starting to recognize the time constraints that have been placed on this commission. So that's just what I wanted to point out explicitly for you all as far as what's been revised. And this is a living document. We will continue to revise this based on the direction of commissioners as far as what study sessions you'd like, what public hearings you'd like, and then how to get into the actual discussions. Reminder that we are also still in the study session phase. So if there are, I think this is a pretty important moment for us to really identify other topics that we want to schedule and get on the calendar, so that we can move into the discussion on phase 2 and not spin our wheels too much. I don't say that in a kind of a dismissive way, but acknowledging that the discussions actually are going to take a fair amount of time, and we want to make sure that you're both well prepared based on the study sessions and questions you have, but also leaving enough time to get into the discussions themselves. I think that's probably all I have to share right now, Chair.
Thank you. As I said before, this is a working document that we'll continue to revise and to continue to edit. At this time, I'm going to ask our clerk, Tony, to speak to the supplemental budget request memo that she presented. There's also, you also have a draft of a letter to the mayor and the council on our behalf to ask for additional resources. And so I wanted to open up that, since we're bringing it back to you, I wanted to open up that conversation. So if, Tony, if you want to talk about the memo that you prepared for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a letter advocating one way or the other. It's just sort of statement of facts. Because I don't have, it's hard to do research exactly because we go out for things, but I looked at I'll explain how I came by the numbers. So for outside counsel, typically we would need to RFP that out. We can't just go out and hire outside counsel. We do have an agreement with a firm, Hanson and Bridget, for our Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices. So I pulled their contract since they're supporting a commission. It's $250,000 for a 4-year agreement. Their previous contract was also, it was a 1-year agreement with 3 additional options. And that one said the first year should not exceed $60,000. So $60,000 could be reasonable for an outside counsel for a year. That was a few years ago though, so I don't know how prices have changed. And then for an analyst, if you wanted to do a research analyst, I got numbers from my budget staff in my office. For a prorated analyst for the rest of the year is $137,840. That includes base salary at $71,000 plus benefits. Translation, I just gave you like the translation for one agenda would be $1,575. If it's the same as the previous agenda, I used March 8th as the example. That was 10,501 words at 15 cents a word. That's how I came by the calculation. However, we also have time. If we were to do translations for all agendas, just know that we would have to create our agenda 3 weeks before the meeting date. So you would not be able to move quickly on, we wouldn't be able to change agendas the way we do now. We'd have to have it all set 3 weeks ahead. For interpretation services, a 3-hour meeting with Spanish and Vietnamese interpretation would be approximately $1,410 per meeting. If your meetings are shorter, that would be less. If they're longer, that would be more. I just did a basic 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then Grassroots Organization, this one was really tricky. I didn't know how to give you a budget number. So I looked through our agreements that we had on our Giles contract database on our website. And the closest type of agreement I found was a grant we do to the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. And then they do grants to grassroots organizations specifically for voter turnout, low turnout voter precincts. And that's $374,000. I don't know how much you would need for, that's, I think, it's almost like you tell us how much money you want to ask for, and then we would work within that budget on what we could grant to people.
Okay, questions for Tony?
And so what I would need from you guys today is sort of to let me and Fred know if you have something specific, like if you want to say, we want to request $100,000 for grassroots organizations, we want to request this, we want to request that. So that, and then authorize him to work with me to draft a letter that we would then take to rules.
Okay, Commissioner Lazat, well, let's get started.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. The RFP for outside counsel. Some of us who are elected now or formerly know how long that could possibly take. What is the shortest you've ever seen an RFP go out, come back, and then hire somebody?
I think the one we did with Lawrence is the shortest one I've ever seen. I think that was a 2-month process. That was actually really fast.
Does the city attorney's office not have some people, outside counsel, on some sort of retainer, or that we could look at them to see, or are they all litigators?
Well, Mark could answer that better. But what we've always done was we don't just go, like, I've never added for Board of Fair Campaign and Public Practices. We've always gone to RFP for it. But Mark that's actually a city attorney's managed contract.
Yes, we do have outside counsel for particular matters to advise the city attorney's office on. The Hanson Bridget contract is one that the city attorney's office manages. But that one was procured through an RFP because there were particular parameters that was desired about the outside counsel. And I'd have to look to see the law firms that we serve, but Hanson Bridget filled the role because they were outside of the area. They didn't have they didn't represent any of the city council members and things like that. They do have other contracts with the city of San Jose for legal counsel, but they fit the bill that we were looking for. So I can't represent that any of the law firms that we have currently under retainer would meet the needs of this commission.
So we're looking at if we crossed our fingers and our toes, 2 months or way longer, because we have to go through the RFP process to hire outside counsel.
Yes.
Okay. I think we need to understand the thought process towards wanting outside counsel. The memo says that the commentators suggested it, but I only heard Bob Brownstein suggest it. I could be mistaken, but I'd hate to see us run an RFP and it take 4 or 5 months, and it defeats the purpose of what we're attempting to accomplish. So I think we need to understand why we need outside counsel. I'm not opposed to it. I just think we need to understand that if we get it, we're not going to get somebody until September.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. And I'm going to call on Commissioner Tran.
Yeah. Aside from just the RFP process itself, which I'm hearing would take at best 2 months, what about the budget process itself in terms of going to the council? How much time would that take?
That would take a few weeks. We once Fred and I get the letter written, signed, it goes to rules. Then it would need to go and get agendized for council. So that's like minimum 3 weeks to go to council. And it may not even go to council. If it goes to rules could choose to move it on to council. They could choose not to.
And if they choose not to, obviously, then the option of retaining outside counsel is closed anyway.
Right.
What about the RFP to do just outreach? How long would that process take?
I haven't looked at doing an RFP for outreach.
Oh, sorry. I meant to ask that in the context of what we've already talked about in terms of bringing on the community organizations.
That one, I haven't done that. So I need to work with the city manager's office because they're the ones that did that voter outreach one. That's not coming from my office. I think that's different, and it depends on the dollar amounts. If I don't know the timing of that because I would be working with the budget office on it. So I can't guarantee anything on timing. I would say minimum a month.
And I just want to offer a point of clarification. We actually were brought on not through a full RFP process, but part of a qualified vendor pool.
That's right.
So there are qualified vendor pools that include, outreach and engagement. So there are some options there that I think could be looked into. But
Thank you.
and that might be a more expedient.
Oh, do we know if we have any, trustworthy or just, I guess, longstanding outreach organizations that are on the qualified vendor list?
I can't speak to
It's
that.
very, I'm like, I'm thinking, I'm like, because I just looked at it on Friday. I could pull it up. We do have a list of qualified vendors. I don't recall there being attorneys on there though.
Okay, so that'd be one thing we need to investigate. Commissioner Segal.
Hey, what specific questions will the attorneys be answering? What will their role be?
I think the idea that originally was that if we're going to draft language for alternatives in the report recommendations, that you would be using outside counsel to draft those recommendations. So we may say, yeah, we really like this idea. We really want to see what would the language look like. I think that's the reason for the outside counsel. I think that's the reason, whatever we feel about that.
And is that something that the city attorney, Mark Vanny, is not comfortable doing?
Oh, is that a question for me? I'm fine doing that. I was involved in the process when this issue was brought forward in last summer in implementing the draft charter changes for a proposed measure. I'm not aware there's nothing yet that's been discussed that creates any conflicts for me or for my office. So I'm comfortable doing that, time permitting as well, but I am familiar with that process and was involved last summer when this issue came before the council.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate that, Mark.
Commissioner Callender.
Yeah, just had some ways to look at this and hopefully some solutions. I know there's also a draft letter which doesn't talk to budgetary terms. I think if we start recommending to council how much we should have per each pot, I'm not sure that's a winning way to approach this versus talking about the outcomes that we like to see. So looking at the outside counsel, from what I've seen, it sounds like we have outside counsel and specifically Hanson Bridget already under retainer and under a contract. Mr. Vanny, could we ultimately amend that contract to provide support for the commission?
Well, I have to check to see if that contract is something that council approves. But we'd have to see if Hanson Bridget, one, would be willing to do that work. The attorney that does the work for the Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices, it's just one person in that office. So we'd have to see if, one, he was comfortable with taking on that role, or if Hanson Bridget was able to do it. And then two, whether or not Hanson Bridget is the law firm that either the council would select, my office would select, or would serve the needs of this particular commission. But it is something that is possible if all parties were interested in pursuing it. And there was money allocated as well, because from a budgetary standpoint, that $250,000 is for the Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices, so it would have to be reallocated accordingly. And the municipal code does require that the Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices have a independent evaluator that is funded for a 4-year period.
Okay, understood. Does your office, does council's office, have a qualified vendor pool of attorneys so you could avoid going through an RFP if the council wanted to go in this direction?
Yeah, I can get back to you and find out if we have, we have outside counsel for particular legal matters or issues that come up, whether there maybe is a conflict with my office or it's a subject matter area that is better suited for outside counsel. So I can check to see if there was somebody that we use or have a pool that would be suitable for this kind of purpose.
Okay, because I think we could probably avoid the RFP route and move quick. And I do agree that time is of the essence. I saw that this from the clerk's office. I saw that you put in a research analyst position versus looking for a consulting firm. And I was going back to the draft letter that I saw, and it referred to hiring a consultant or consultants to provide the analysis and research. Is there no way to pull on board a consultant to do this? For, say, I'm not sure what the city's limits, but say for under $50,000 to be able to move quickly.
I just look at it, typically we don't hire consultants to do work that can be done by an employee. It's a city policy. So like Megan is a city employee. She's hired for a year to support you as a city employee in a city employee's position, because it's the type of work a typical city employee would do. We couldn't hire a consultant because our city policy doesn't allow that. So if it's like what Lawrence is doing is not something a typical city employee would do, a neutral party to facilitate a meeting to make sure there's no conflict of interests, that made sense to go with the consultant. So this is me following our typical city policy. There are a lot of things that I think, oh, a consultant could just come on, and my budget people are like, nope, can't do it with a consultant. It's got to be done by a city employee because that's typical city employee work. We can use temp agencies for a temporary position, but typically it's just not city policy.
Okay, so because I would see this as temporary work since we're going to be ending in the late fall.
Right. So we would hire this person as a temporary, it would be an overstrength position. So it would be a city employee on a limited term.
Mm-hmm. And then the final portion I was looking at is the grassroots organizations. I heard you say that you didn't know how the Silicon Valley Community Foundation was brought on board for that $374,000.
I could not remember it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would hope that maybe that same process could be utilized, and that maybe the Silicon Valley Foundation could quickly bring folks on board and other organizations to do the community outreach strategies that were similar to the vote precincts. I hope that, Mr. Chair, when we get to, I don't know at what point you're going to look to entertain a motion, but I do like the memo that was written, and that hopefully maybe we can use that as a start versus going down the rabbit hole of how much should be allocated to everything. I would prefer that council and professional staff say, here's what we can do, and then figure out a way to be able to make this commission successful by helping us to achieve these outcomes.
Thank you, Commissioner Callender. I'm going to call for a motion when I finish getting through the comments that he made. Commissioner Segura.
Good evening. I'll make mine very brief. I just think when we talk about the purpose of the commission and, it's important that we be equitable and inclusive, and I just don't see how we can be either of those things absent translation. Appropriate translation.
Thank you, Commissioner Diep.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say in response to what the chair was saying earlier, if it's the intent or the hope to get outside counsel for, what was it, legislative drafting, I think, our city attorney's office is more than capable of that. Even council members don't submit, draft legislation. You just vote and you say, this is the big idea. And then the city attorney's office figures out the legality of it all and what the wording should be. And then there's, second reading and all that. So I've never seen it where a commission or even a council member gives precise language for adoption, because there are other moving pieces here, whatever that may be. And so maybe that's a way to cut costs and it may be unnecessary, but I just offer that insight.
Commissioner Matsumura. You're on mute.
Thank you. The dangers of double mute. Regarding the timeline for outside counsel, it sounds like you have a number of options to explore. Also, noting that the drafting itself will likely take place a little farther down the road than the outreach. It seems like that indicates that we shouldn't foreclose this purely on the basis of the timing issues, but should, of course, try to move expediently on this front, while not saying, oh, we don't have the time. But I think it is also important to answer the question of substance, of what the benefit would be potentially of having outside counsel. noting that the 1985 Commission did make it a priority and that some of the documents posted on our research site, including a manual on how to run charter review commissions, notes that outside counsel is pretty much a non-negotiable. But I do believe, I know Mr. Brownstein has been a regular fan of ours, even when he's not a guest speaker. I'm wondering if he's here tonight and able to expand upon the comments that he made at our last meeting about what we should take into consideration about the potential value of outside counsel.
I'm not going to go back to public. I think his notes are in the minutes as well. Is there any other commissioner that wants to speak to this issue before we open up for motions? It hasn't got a chance to speak. Am I missing anyone?
I see Commissioner Segal and Commissioner Barroso.
Hi, I'm very sorry. But what is the analyst for? Is that to do research for us and then summarize it for us?
I believe that was the indication when I made the motion, is to do research similar to what came from the professor, which provided us a variety of research. I think if we need someone to be able to dig up information and provide it back, we do need a researcher that reports to us.
Commissioner Callender, do you feel that each of us should be actually reading the articles rather than relying on somebody else to tell us what they say?
Through the chair, this isn't reading. I've read through the entire charter. If you listen to what the professor said, the professor brought in a variety of information from outside of this institution. They brought in from different cities, from different information. That would require everyone on this to be researchers. And I don't know about you, but we're all volunteers here. And so if there's a variety of information that we need to make sure that we have the adequate support to do it. I wouldn't want to drop that on the chair, on the clerk's office or the attorney's office. We don't have adequate support to do those kind of things.
Commissioner Barroso.
Yeah, well, to kind of follow up on that, but I do have another question. Would the San Jose State college students that are supporting us be able to some sort of do some of that research? I think Tony suggested that a couple of meetings ago.
I wasn't going to mention it at this meeting yet because I don't have anything firm. I am meeting with some grad students and a professor this week to see if we can create like a graduate paper project that they'll get, a grade on, and then they can work with us to do this research paper for you guys. I'm meeting with them this week. This professor has like 3 people, 3 grad students that he thinks, one he says would be a perfect fit for us, but he's got a couple others. But we wanted to kind of talk it through this week. That's why I didn't bring it up to you guys yet because I just talked to the professor today about setting up something for later this week.
Okay. I don't know if that helps the discussion, but it does give us some insight and an option. I don't know how that fits into the motion. Is this a good time to talk about the calendar? Because I was curious about where would the presidential cycle in terms of the mayor's election cycle would show up. I didn't see it in the review.
Okay. Yeah. Lawrence?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think I meant to include that in April 19th so that there would be that the role of districts and timing together. But yeah, that is yep, we need to fit that in. So let me like I said, this is a little bit of a moving target given the requests from you all. So trying to revise this week over week and then schedule the right speakers and get you the right information. So I'm doing my best on the back end to get people aligned with the interests of the study topics. But so we might need to expand this calendar just a little bit to have time for that discussion on election timing. But thank you for that note, and I'll revise accordingly.
Commissioner Percival.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to comment on the last point on the calendar on the elections. I was going to mention this earlier, but I think it's really important that the discussion around the mayoral powers versus council really needs to be discussed while we're talking about election timing, because the two are connected. Depending on how many people participate in the elections can have a really important impact on people's perceptions of accountability and the different sort of incentives that a mayor would have, and how that power is used depending on who elects them. So I think that really needs to be moved up in part of the study phase. And
yes, can I just ask you a quick clarifying question here? Is this what you're getting at, the role of districts, how council members are elected and their role relative to a mayor with more consolidated power?
Right. Either that, April 19th or May 3rd, in terms of power and accountability.
Yeah.
Like that is very much going to be, those two issues which should be very connected to participation in elections and the breadth of participation and who participates. So I think I think in this draft, Lawrence, I think you have the election timing in July sometime, but I think that really needs to be moved up.
No, I had that. Oh, wait. Oh, that's a discussion. That's not the actual. So, we don't need to go down the rabbit hole here, but one thing we could do is just consolidate here and then move election timing up here.
Yeah. I think that would be helpful. Because I think the commission would want to study that and the sort of various consequences and costs and benefits of that at the same time. So.
Okay. Thank you for that, that clarification.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep.
All right. I am ready for a motion. And
Mr. Chair, just a point of order. Are we going to hear from the public before we have a motion? I don't know if we've heard from the public on this item.
Tony, is it now or is it after? When do we?
Sometimes we're inconsistent in the city. Sometimes they do it before a motion is made. Sometimes they wait until after the motion so the public knows what the motion is and they know what they want to comment on. So it's really up to you.
That's what I was looking for. So Commissioner Calendar, do you want to make a motion? Because if we can bring a motion to the public, then they have a reason to comment beyond the calendar.
All right, well then, if you'd like me to make a motion, I like the draft letter. I'm going to move that we approve the draft letter that's in the agenda.
For the sake of discussion, can I get a second?
Second.
Commissioner Burr, thank you. I guess I have two clarifying questions to the maker of the motion. Do you give the chair the authorization to submit the letter, first of all? We want that in the motion itself. But the second question I have really is about, do you want a amount of money in there? Or are you asking the chair with the clerk to be able to come up with an estimate for the letter itself? The Rules Committee is going to want to know amount. So is there, do we have the ability to go back and, now that we've heard the commission in terms of its options, there's lots of ways that you've thought this through, whether we use inside counsel, whether we use consultants, who's on the different vendor agreements. If you're giving the authorization to the chair for me to figure all these pieces out, and if you give me a dollar number, I think that would expedite our ability to move forward so that the spirit of the letter drafted for March 23rd would be kept in mind, but we'd figure out the most expedient way to get these resources if possible.
So, Mr. Chairman, as the first part of the question, it was to approve the letter and then authorize you to submit it to council. I had not wanted to think about the numbers because, as you heard, we have no idea how the council component is going to work out. I think that we're still at a loss and need research. The last component, as it dealt with the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, I don't think we had answers clearly there, nor will we understand the costs. And then if it has to be a temporary versus a consultant, I think we are an employee. I think we don't even have the answers there for that. The cost of translation is the only thing that I think that we have a clear understanding of and what the costs are associated with that. So I'm not prepared to say that we add an X amount to each of the components. But I'll look to how you may want to handle this. And maybe maybe that's something we want to take on secondarily, is after you've been able to research these and more adequately be able to pull together what the amounts may be. Maybe that's something that we authorize the chair to move forward with and have recommended amounts. But I don't think we're in a position right now to have any recommended amounts, from at least from what I heard, except for translation.
Appreciate the clarity. Commissioner Marshman, you're on mute.
I would say we should get our own clarity on whether we need outside counsel and some other things before we go to the council, to the city council, and ask for money, because they're going to be disinclined to approve a huge amount. And if we can trim what we're asking for, we probably have a better chance. Correct me if I'm wrong, Linda, Lon.
That's fine. Thank you. Commissioner Matsumura.
Thank you. So, listening to Commissioner Marshman and Commissioner Calendar, let me see. I want to try to encapsulate what Commissioner Calendar was saying, potentially as a friendly amendment, although I'm interested in hearing whether he and Seconder would like to take it as a separate motion, to request further research from the staff on the budget amount. I do think for purposes of timeliness, we need to move processes in parallel, so that we need to, because I believe there is no rules meeting next week due to the Cesar Chavez holiday. And so just for purpose of timeliness, we need to move this towards the April 7th rules meeting, while at the same time working through some of the very important details that we've begun to discuss here as a commission. So for that reason, I think it is important that I'm going to be supporting the motion to adopt this letter, and would say, let us also request for the staff to bring back some research, kind of building on what the clerk has begun to provide for us. So what are the options for us to be able to get outside counsel? Also, essentially what are the low and high end of what we could be getting for certain dollar amounts? So on the front of outside counsel, what would a scope look like for within the 50 to 100K range, right? What would we get on each end of that? Similarly, for research, well, let me come back to research in a moment. For community outreach, what we get on maybe the 100 to 150 range, what kind of scope would be available to us? And so, sorry, putting this together as I'm figuring it out, because it's a complex thing we're trying to do. I think what we're hoping to hear back from staff is both what scope is possible for those low and high end dollar amounts, and I would put research also in the 50 to 100,000, and then there's a dollar amount, and then sort of procedurally, how can we both get sort of the highest quality services, because I think we need to keep in mind the importance of the mission and what we're trying to carry out here. So procedurally, how can we get the highest quality services in an efficient and expedient way? And there's a full conversation that we started to have outside counsel. We've touched upon this with research, right? What are the options there, as well as for the community outreach? I liked the point that somebody made about continuing to work with the Community Foundation as one possibility.
Okay.
And to Commissioner Marshman's point about getting clarity on whether we need outside counsel, clearly I'm of the opinion that we do. But again, I think it's important that we be moving things in parallel, because we are going to have the opportunity, if we want to change a proposal if we have a meeting before rules, and then we'll probably have another meeting potentially before it gets to council. We don't have the time to do it in sequence.
Thank you. Commissioner Lazat. You're on mute. You're on mute. Commissioner Lazat, you're on mute. Thank you.
I couldn't unmute me. So Lana or Tony can chime in or correct me, but if this letter goes to the mayor and then it's sent to rules, the first thing he's going to do is what's in the second to last paragraph, which says, we request the city council staff provide the estimated cost to accomplish our request. So, that's the first thing they're going to want to know. And I don't think it has anything to do with us, other than do we or do we not want outside counsel, and do we want 10 outside people? But this letter is pretty clear about what we're asking of the council. And I think that, that's something that's going to have to be determined with regard to the costs and the high and the low, and et cetera, et cetera. And maybe the mayor can work with our chair to get a sense of what it is we're looking for, so we can have some cost estimates that go to rules and then goes to the council. But I don't think we should be spending the time, nor do we have to necessarily, with regard to a budget for this. I mean, we're asking for something, and they're either going to say yes or no preliminarily, and then they're going to say, okay, what's it going to cost me? So I mean, that's what my 8 years have taught me on the council.
Thank you, Commissioner Lazat. I appreciate that. I see no more hands, so I'm going to go to the public to hear the question. And the motion on the floor is to adopt the letter that's dated March 23rd to Mayor Liccardo and the city council members, requesting the city provide estimated cost to accomplish our request. There is not a dollar amount in the letter, and that's the intent of the motion. Okay, will the clerk call for public comment?
Sure. The first public speaker is Paul Soto.
Yes, Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. My comment is restricted to having the ex-mayor Ron Gonzalez speak to this committee with regard to any legitimacy that he can lend to the business of the city of San Jose. Mayor Liccardo left it. I mean, Mayor Gonzalez left in disgrace. There was a $10 million fiasco kickback issue that's surrounded his mayoralship. Also, he was the one that placed the felon statue, which I spearheaded the community engagement to have removed. And so I take great exception of having this man speak in any legitimate forum that would lend any credibility to what he has to contribute to the city. I mean, that took a lot of effort within the Chicano community. I've spoken to a lot of elders in this city that have very, very strong opinions about what has happened in this city over the past 40 years. I'm from Salsipuedes, so I'm connected to all of the historical injustices that redlining and the discriminations that have went on in this city, of which he was one of the main progenitors of, with respect to the placement of that statue and being the first Chicano mayor of a major city, and he left in disgrace, and also having an affair with his secretary while he was in office. So I'd really caution you as to who you choose to speak at these forums. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Soto. Next speaker.
Robert Brownstein.
Good evening. As regards the issue of outside counsel, the 1985 Commission overwhelmingly supported the idea of outside counsel, and they did because the council is not just someone who does drafting. That person is also a problem solver, someone who will help you get where you want to go. You're going to need some very, very careful legal advice. You're going to be trying to move towards equity in a state that still has Prop 209 and its constitution. You need counsel that works with you. You need counsel that's going to come up with language that's both constitutional and meets your objectives. And you're going to need counsel that you have full confidence in, as regards the idea that counsel sole mission is to help you get the decisions that you want and not serve other interests. The 1985 Commission could never have done its work without outside counsel, and I don't believe we did it through an RFP process. I think the outside counsel was chosen through a much faster method because the council was on board relatively quickly. On the issue of the budget, Let me just offer my services on a pro bono basis, having been the budget director of San Jose for 8 years. If someone should claim that the city lacks the resources to be able to meet your very reasonable budget requests, I assure you it does not lack the resources, and I would be more than happy to identify the place in the budget where those resources exist. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Next speaker, please.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. I think procedurally, after if you take public comment after making a motion, you're supposed to ask your committee, the chair is supposed to ask the committee if anyone wants to change their vote in the motion. I think no, but I'm sorry, I may not be saying that right. That's only after the motion is voted for. Sorry about that. Anyway, hi, thank you. I wanted to quickly comment that it was my feeling that with language interpretation that it's costing $250 an hour. Is there a way you can do it for $100 an hour? Can you get someone from city staff with city union help to get overtime that would be considered okay to do for $100 an hour, or to call a temp agency, or to call the college kids that you're addressing with these other issues, and find college kids to work language interpretation? It seems like you have a set amount of reasons why you can't do that. I'd be interested to know what that is, and to see what the options that I have offered are what we all think about, and why is that so difficult to work towards. I guess that's all for now, and thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Beekman. Next speaker, please.
Caller ending with the number 5140. Please press *6 to unmute.
Yeah, I'm wondering what could actually save this city right now. I don't think it's anything you guys are talking about. You need to open this place up. It's going to be huge budget shortfalls. I don't know where you're going to be able to pay all these cops and firemen $300,000 plus a year to have these administrative jobs. You need to tell the city, they need to be able to get tough with the county and the state and have more autonomy than what they're doing. I mean, the city has to placate to the DA, the sheriff, the governor on what they can and can't do, and they seem to throw their hands up in the air, saying they can do nothing. I think the city council and the mayor need to be stronger against the state and the county, especially the county. The county is the most fascistic thing in my whole life that I've ever seen, and they just run roughshod over all the cities in their county. And San Jose being the biggest one, they just roll over and die. It's unbelievable, that they would even take any direction from them. The horrible things that they do. I mean, when you go to speak at the county, we want to talk to the county commission. You get 1 minute and they cut you off. I mean, you don't dare do anything in their quarters either. I mean, these guys are. I mean, the county is probably as closest thing to the Politburo or Kremlin you could ever imagine. And San Jose they just lay down and die. It's really sad. This city is going to be a disaster in the next year if they don't open up and start getting these businesses. There's so many storefronts that are closed. It's really sad. It looks like a bad Eastern European city.
Next speaker, please.
SVBC.
Hi, this is Shiloh again. So I wanted to say that I support the motion, and it sounds like there's a lot of folks who do. And I know you all know this, but I think it's worth just saying again that the rules of the game, governance, determine who gets to play. And we know that the rules have been set and continue to be set in a way that keeps some people out and allow others in. And so it's really, really exciting and important that you guys get to change that and you get to think about it. And unfortunately, the budget that you were given says something entirely different. It says it's not important, because that's how we express our values, right? We spend money on something, and then that tells us whether it's valuable or not. And I have to say, as someone who was on the general plan task force years ago and has been on different task force updates and a planning commissioner, that I was really surprised when I was listening in on the first meeting and heard, that you really were only being staffed by a consultant and Tony. And I was like, oh my gosh, how are they going to get this done? They need more resources. So I just wanted to emphasize that. And yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Ballard. Any next speaker?
That was the final speaker.
Awesome, thank you. If you're ready, I'm going to call for the question on the motion, which is to support the draft letter to the council dated March 23rd, 2020. It should be 2021, I believe.
Yes.
Just for the record?
Yes.
Will the clerk take the roll, please?
I'll take the roll. So first is Barbara Marshman.
Aye.
Okay, Christina Johnson.
Yes.
Dan Bizzuto is absent. Elizabeth Monley.
Yes.
Ellie Matsumura.
Yes.
Enrico Calendar.
Aye.
Frank Meitsky. Frank Meitsky. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes.
Thank you. Garrick Percival.
Yes.
George Sanchez.
Yes.
Hui Tran.
Yes.
Jeremy Barus.
Aye.
Jose Posadas.
Yes.
Lund Diep.
Nay.
Linda Lizotte.
Yes.
Luis Barrocio.
Yes.
Magnolia Siegel.
Yes.
Maria Fuentes is absent. Sammy Robledo. Sammy Robledo.
Hello? No,
No. What did I hear? A no.
that is correct.
Oh, sorry, I'm unable to hear you.
That's correct.
A no. Okay, thank
Sure,
you.
but I voted no.
Okay, Sherry Segura.
Yes.
No. Okay. T. Tran.
Yes.
Veronica Amador.
Yes.
Yong Zhao.
Yes.
Sorry, was that yes?
Yes.
Thank you. And then just to confirm, Lun, that was a yes, correct?
No, Lun, I have a no from Lun Diep, and I have a no from, looking for the face on there, Sammy. And everybody else, I want to confirm this before we move on. I have just those two no's. Everybody else was a yes, correct?
I had a no from Sherry Segura.
I heard yes from her.
I said yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
That's
Sorry,
why
thank
I was planning on confirming. I just want to make sure I have a no from Commissioner Diep and Commissioner Robledo. Okay, so last call, we have 2 no's, the rest are yeses. Thank you.
So that passes. Okay. I'm going to move us on I will take up Commissioner Matsumura's suggestion that we kind of work simultaneous there. We'll submit the letter, but we'll also start doing the research work so that we're not waiting for that response, just in the interest of saving us time and taking into consideration a lot of the great suggestions that you all made tonight around options of what possibilities are. So we'll start doing that research kind of in the immediacy as we do these two things. We'll track them simultaneous. All right, I am going to move us to our last public item, which is public comment on items that are not addressed in the agenda. If there's something that is not on the agenda tonight, it is in the purview of this commission. I want to make sure that we remind the public of that this is the commission.
This is Tony, the city clerk. We do have the public record item 2A, which we missed. We can take that after this open forum section if you'd like. And that was just, that's a receive and file.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So we're going to open forum first. And so I have Paul Soto.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I did still have another item on the work plan. I know we discussed the budget and took comments on the work plan. Are we still able to do that?
Go ahead. We took up the calendar, we took up the budget, the letter. Is there another item on the work plan?
I did have a comment on the calendar, but didn't realize that we were needing to do that then in addition to the budget.
It's okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much for that. Just in light of hearing a number of comments from the public tonight about kind of getting into more specifics around what are the issues under sort of category 3 of other approaches to equity, to accountability, representation, and inclusion. I think it's a pretty complex issue. Mr. Hudson said it really well on that front of, we've got people raise issues of police, housing, budget. I've heard earlier reference to campaign finance as well. But what of that belongs in the charter is an incredibly complex issue. And I'm concerned that if we sort of push that more towards the end of our process, we may not know what we're getting ourselves into, that we need to front load some of the analysis of what are the actual levers that we have in the charter to address some of these issues. So given that, I did want to ask to include on the work plan, potentially for either April 19th or May 3rd, to begin to examine this issue of how do we apply this lens of equity to the other areas of the charter, so that we can start to sketch out in the way that we've sketched out kind of specific topics around forms of governance and elections timing, that we can start to sketch out specific topics around the other areas of the charter.
Yeah, do you have any specifics about what that could look like? Is there, we can bookmark something, but if there's any, I need your help in understanding exactly what's going to be most helpful to inform those conversations. And I do think that some of that is bordering on discussion. I've certainly heard the desire from the public for the focus on equity. But if you have any, and I could spend some time sort of looking to see what's out there. I do think that one way to look at that is looking at other comparable cities. Detroit has come up in some of the ways they've tried to include a sort of a human rights or equity component. But if you have specific thoughts, they'd be appreciated. And I see two hands, Commissioners Calendar and Brosio.
Yes, when you asked what it would look like, I'm just kind of remarking off of some of the comments that I heard today, because I would like to have an understanding. This is what the research would be good for, is what are the management practices in other cities out there. And I don't even know which cities to tell you to begin to look at in terms of the best management practices.
Well, and to that point, I had asked that, this didn't come up in the question from in the conversation with Professor Nelson, but I'd asked her that very question, is there any research about sort of equity overlay as it relates to governance forms and the best sort of variables I could come up with voter turnout. We can, and there's other researchers that I'm in touch with that I can share the same conversation with. I think actually what we're going to find, and what I've found in my initial research here, is that there is not a lot, and there are some more recent attempts to incorporate this, and in fact there's a very active conversation through the National Civic League and their Model City Charter about what it would mean to incorporate equity more directly in city charters. And again, they focus on a council manager form. Unfortunately, I think that this is a little bit of I won't say uncharted territory, but new territory. And so we can do what we can, and that's why I'm asking for any ideas you have to guide the research in lieu of having the full-time research.
There are a few things that after hearing them today, one of the things that I heard was elected police chief, the ability to remove the police chief and other department heads like you. And on our charter, in San Jose's charter, you can actually remove the city manager by a recall. The question I have is, how many other cities is that present in? I can only tell you of 2 that I know of in the country, but there could be a lot more. I just happen to know of 2, one being the city of Santa Clara that has an elected police chief and elected department head. So the questions I would have is, what is the prevalence of this and how has it worked in those cities when you have elected department heads, and what department heads are elected? So that's kind of the information I would like to cover.
Yeah, and I heard tonight that the prevalence was not as important rather than how it's worked out. And so then becomes kind of an individual study session on implementation in specific cities. Because I think what we heard from Professor Nelson was prevalence of some aspects of form of governance. So what I'm hearing you say is that you'd like to, and that specific kind of power or authority vested in council, and that's to remove a specific elected official or have a specific elected department heads is great and very, very helpful. But I also want to make sure that I'm clear that you're suggesting that you want to hear essentially stories rather than research about how that's working out for a given.
Well, not necessarily stories.
Okay.
To be able to determine, because I'm sure that if we were able to look at the research, we can say here that out of these cities, we know that these cities have an elected police chief. Well, how does that look for their structure? And I'm sure there's got to be some empirical research on how has it worked. I'm sure there's newspaper articles. I'm sure there's something out there, but I don't even begin to look. One of the things I also heard, we talk about the equity lens. I heard about sprawl and its impact potentially on affordable housing. What research has been done on that to say that sprawl does cause impacts to affordability?
Okay, great. Thank you for those specifics. Other specifics like that I see Commissioner Brosio.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So I'm thinking about our last meeting, and I think it was Commissioner Fuentes who motioned that we include aspects of racial equity, socioeconomic, racial, and gender. I think were the 3 that were emphasized. And I think Commissioner Amador also followed up by inviting people, I think from GEAR, if I'm saying that correctly. Yeah. And then I emailed out, and I could email this out to all the other members of the commission, but I emailed yourself and Chair Ferrer the idea of inviting staff members from our office, our San Jose office of racial equity. I think it would be a good tie-in to our discussions. Invite them to kind of build our knowledge and give us some sort of background in terms of what are the numbers, what are the patterns, what are the trends, what are the issues that they're seeing that could feed into our work. And I went onto their website, and it's interesting. One of their directives is consider additional measures and potential charter amendments as needed that will improve accountability. Oh no, well that's ours. But they do have similar language in terms of ensuring that San Jose is reaching that level of equity, right? And I think if we move in the direction that we're moving in terms of considering those things that I just said, right? How do we improve accountability, representation, and inclusion, which is one of our directives. It would be nice to invite them, and I would probably, as I said in my email, invite them to be a consistent panelist on our side, so they can provide that sort of counsel for us when needed. So that's one tangible step that I would recommend.
Great, thank you, Commissioners Johnson and Amador.
Thank you. So the city of Austin has a equity assessment tool that their departments use to ensure that their programs are meeting the needs of their community, and it's viewed through an equity lens. I think that would be worthy to look into more to see if that's something that would be possible here and would be worthwhile to dive into more to see if we can pull something out from their process to help us here.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Amador.
Yes, and just to add on the racial equity, I believe also in San Francisco, the Office of Racial Equity, and they did requirements to draft a racial equity action plan, and they actually included a few amendments to their charter review. And so again, right, I've been asking that we bring GARE. I believe, to my understanding, is our racial equity department here in San Jose has been trained with GARE, and that's the same tools that Austin, Texas is using. They developed some tools that their city uses to see the impacts, the racial impacts, as well as the economical impacts that we'll have on its people. So definitely, again, I'm advocating that we bring somebody. I don't think we have to pay them extra because they're already within the city, maybe, for their expertise. But again, thank you so much. And thank you, Commissioner Vorosio, for bringing that back.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is less about sort of the implementation of an equity lens on existing city charters. Yes, if we can get to that, but also potentially more of a session on equity lenses used in the municipal context and how they might be applied to the work of this commission to suggest recommendations for the council around charter revisions. Is that so you have kind of a both and there? Is that nod of heads? Yes, maybe? Close? All right, we're getting a few. Okay, great, very helpful, thank you. And I'm not trying to sort of wag the dog here, wag the tail, whatever it is. I just want to make sure that I'm responding in to your needs and being getting clarity on that. Thank you, Commissioner Matsumura, and everyone that shared their thoughts.
I would just add two things. One is that we do have, I was going to ask you to pull up the calendar itself. We do have a number of actual sections of the commission, I'm sorry, of the charter that I believe it was Commissioner Callender asked us specifically to pull up and to really have discussions around. I would encourage us as we look at these other sections of the charter that we take the equity lens to them so that that is scheduled in terms of the, I thought we had.
Is this the discussion that you're talking about?
No, further up.
Sure.
I'm sorry, earlier than that. In articles in April 5th, we have a number of extra sections that we're looking at, and those are really specifically getting us into the weeds a bit. So as we study those, really having an equity lens of what does this mean? How could we apply an equity lens in terms of the ideas or recommendations we might take? So we're getting into the charter itself and certain areas that I think really lend themselves to look at some of the questions that you're raising and definitely some of the issues that the public raised tonight. So that's the point that I was hoping Lawrence was going to make, that we do have something in the schedule for April, and kind of the how it's working and how well it's working is the real questions that we're asking to the city manager, the former city manager, the former mayor. I do think that's an important piece to add to. And then secondly, I would just add that I did look at the GARE materials. And so I'm hoping that we can incorporate the GARE materials wherever they seem appropriate, whenever we can use a tool, kind of automatically just do that in the framework of our discussions. I thought it was really helpful. So thank you to Commissioner Amador for her suggestion. I just, it was a really good read, and I had some ideas of how we might be able to incorporate even their techniques or ideas into the framework of what we're doing. And definitely as we look at the writing of our commission report, that'll really take great precedence, I think, as well. So appreciate that support. Okay, then let us go to, are we now able to go to public hearing one last time? Good, all right. Let's go to the public on items that are not on the agenda that should come before this particular commission.
Sorry, Paul Soto?
The dignity of the farm worker. For nearly all people, there is a thing that is more important than money. It is a thing called dignity or self-respect or honor, and it shows itself in many ways. Sometimes it is shown by the man who will fight when he is insulted. We who are the farm workers have been insulted. We have seen ourselves treated like cattle. We have seen how they have taken our work, the work of our hands and our bodies, and made themselves rich while we were left with empty hands between the earth and the sky. We have seen our children treated as inferiors in the schools. We have seen in the face of the cop our inequality before the law. We have known what it was like to be less respected, to be unwanted, to live in a world which did not belong to us. Our color or our language or our job have kept us apart. And the people who are profiting from our separateness are determined to keep it that way. It is the fact that in San Francisco, the growers associations keep an office full of people busy writing propaganda about how farm workers are all winos, bums, incompetents. There is money in the advancement of these lies. We who are picking the grapes and the peaches and the tomatoes, which are the lifeblood of California, are soon going to share in the richness we have made. The little fights against the little grower and the contractor that you read about today are only the beginning. The dignity of the farm worker shows itself in many ways. This year and in the years to come, it will be shown by the man who will fight when he is insulted. I am a descendant of these peoples, of Sal Si Puedes. That's why the centering of racial equity is so critically important at this particular juncture in our existence as human beings. Since 1850, there's been a genocide here in San Jose with the decapitations of native populations. Then there was the spraying of pesticides on my entire family over there in Sal Si Puedes. There was the redlining. There was the beating of school children inside San Jose Unified School District for speaking Spanish. You have a lot of work ahead of you and a lot to correct, and from the historical injustices that we, the Chicanos, have experienced in this city.
Thank you, Mr. Soto. Next speaker.
Claire Beekman.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the meeting tonight. Like I said earlier, I really like the narrative that you're working with, and when you bring in public speakers, and it just really sets my mind at ease how to address the situation. And thank you immensely at this point. I'm wondering if down the road there'll be a long commission process. If that, at some point, I mean, just to bravely, it's because this process and narrative has been so good at first, I'm willing to able to ask, can you occasionally maybe have what was described tonight as someone from a mayor council perspective to describe their position on things and what can take place. I think it would give a good counterbalance, I guess, to what I mean. I really prefer the I guess it was called tonight the council city manager approach, and I would call that term something different, which is kind of the things maybe that San Jose can work on and what can make them unique. I mean, maybe it's not a hybrid model at this point. Maybe it's our own uniqueness and all the good stuff. But yeah, with that good narrative of a council city manager process, it can allow me to hear other points of view. So thank you for that. And the words of Matthew King and others tonight about Section 3, they're really important about the future of equity and issues like that. I work on the issues of future better democratic practices that are possible. In 10 years' time, there's going to be a really important, public future, more sharing of the public process.
Thank you, Mr. Beekman. Any other speakers tonight?
Two more, speaker with a phone number 5140. And that's followed by Alina. (5140), please hit *6 to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Good. Yeah, this city, they like to lay down for the state and the county all the time, but all of a sudden they want to fight the state. So they can set up these speed cameras to send people $125 tickets with no additional assessments, which is always a lie. They always like to tack on all these fees and whatnot to keep down people even further who don't have the money to pay it. Yeah, it's only going to be $125. If any city council people are listening, vote no on it. My city council member, Pam Foley, if she votes yes on it, I will not vote for her. And I want anyone listening, if you think $125 ticket's only going to be that much, they claim no point on your record. You should really think again. It's going to be set up by a private company. It'll be the cheesiest, tackiest way of trying to create revenue. When this city dropped the ball during COVID, not opening things up, they're going to try to get some fast money with these cameras. I want everyone listening to look into those cameras, and they won't be any fun. You'll get the thing in the mail. It'll be a disaster. Even the police department doesn't want it because, well, it takes away their job. That might be a good thing. The city needs to really, they don't need to defund the police. They just need to demote a lot of people down to the level that they should be at in pay and rank. All these lieutenants and captains walking around doing nothing. Bunch of losers, all of them. They don't do anything. The deputy chief, the CEO, to the innovation and design people. This city's crazy. This city's going to go bankrupt, and you guys are sitting around, with a study session. And this isn't high school. You guys really need to sharpen your pencils and get smart with city management. Get the city back open. Stop.
Alina?
Hi, everybody. I know this is a late meeting, so I'm going to keep it short. I wanted to comment on section 10 of boards and commission, and looking at that section on April 5th with an equity lens. How can we build in equitable budget and resources to support boards and commissions in the future? So all the challenges that you're having right now, how can we be looking at that in a future sense so that future commissions do not run into the same problem? And, how are these commissioners being selected? How are they being held accountable? Also, maybe speaking to other commissioners about their lessons learned and their challenges in trying to create change within their respective commissions. And again, so I think this is a really great opportunity to kind of take everything that you've been all going through right now and maybe channeling it into section 10 and seeing, how we can really address the process of this system and how is it affecting us. And thank you again. I know that this is a lot of work and this is a really late meeting, and I really, really appreciate everybody here tonight.
Thank you. And then we have one other item, Tony, which is to
receive and file the letters from the public.
Thank you. So we did receive one letter from the public to this meeting, so it's been added to the agenda. So public reception of that is both seen in public and received by the commissioners.
We have one public speaker on that item, Blair Beekman.
Thank you.
I move to accept the recommendation.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. Yeah, to comment, these are about, our voting rights and voting practices in San Jose for the next 10 years. And like what I was trying to conclude with, in the next 10 years, there's a good idealism that's building that was described by Matt King. And, what I've tried to describe, it's important how you can learn to incorporate that in your decision-making and how you'll be thinking of things. And just good luck in how you can do that. And everything you do, look to an important future that's developing where people will have a really more important part in our future of government and the community democratic process. Thank you.
Thank you. So Tony,
I had a motion from it. I think it was Frank.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Megan, can you call the roll? So if everybody wants to unmute right now, so we can get through it quicker.
Okay, first is Barbara Marshman.
Aye.
Christina Johnson.
Yes.
Jan Bizzuto is absent. Elizabeth Monley.
Yes.
Ellie Matsumura.
Yes.
Enrico Calendar. Enrico Calendar.
Aye.
Thank you. Frank Meitzke.
Yes.
Garrick Percival.
Yes.
George Sanchez.
Yes.
Hui Tran.
Yes.
Jeremy Barus.
Aye.
Jose Posadas.
Yes.
Lund Diep.
Aye.
Linda Lazat.
Yes.
Luis Barrocio.
Yes.
Magnolia Siegel.
Yes.
Maria Fuentes is absent. Sammy Robledo.
Yes. Yes.
Sherry Segura. I think she's absent. T. Tran.
Yes.
Veronica Amador.
Yes.
Yong Zhao.
Yes.
Okay, and I'll call Sherry Segura one more time. I think she's absent. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. And so now we can adjourn to our next charter meeting, April 5th, 2021, 6 p.m. Thank you all, commissioners, for your time, energy, and focus tonight. We appreciate it. Have a great week, and we'll see you in a week and a half, 2 weeks. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Aye.
Good
night, everybody.
Thank you.